I could be like,
Why not? We're on record.
yeah, we're recording.
Oh, it's 7:01.
Good, thank you. I feel all right. I didn't get an agenda.
I'm going to call a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 at 7:02 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber, which has been duly noticed in two places, including the city's website, in accordance with the requirements of RSA 91A. The prayer will be offered tonight by Acting Clerk Alderman Clay, and Alderman Jettie will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with the spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that many and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, please.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderwoman Timmons. Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderman Sennett.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Thibault.
Here.
Alderman Clee is here. Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
You have 13 members.
Thank you very much. Also joining us this evening is Mayor Jim Donchis. We have a public comment period. If anyone wants to give public comment, please approach the podium, give your name and address for the record, and you have a 3-minute window.
Good evening, Karen Bill, 95, Parnell Place here in beautiful Nashua. I'd like to talk about two things. First of all, I would like to suggest that the $225,000 for the feasibility study for rail be taken out of this equation. There doesn't need to be yet another feasibility study for rail. And I'm quoting the Telegraph from December 22nd. In 2004, then Mayor Bernie Streeter proposed a resolution to extend the commuter rail to Nashua. At that time, the city received $4.1 million. Paula Johnson said, "We never did anything with the money." There were, in prior years, Chris Williams, former president of Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce, did one. Former Mayor Lozo did one. Even the governor had said, it's a money pit. He said that estimated construction costs would be $550 million with another $15 million required for annual maintenance. And the MBTA would be running it. The MBTA? They can't even get the Boston trains running. There's been corruption. There's been a lot of down trains, injuries, you name it. They can't keep track of their own stuff. I would hate to see them trying to manage this. They have absolute mismanagement. And Governor Ayotte, same thing. It's a money pit. And why the need now? Do you have people screaming to get rail? Nobody's picketing out front. What's changed from all these feasibility studies? I'll do one for $225. I'll do one for $2.25. What's changed? Why, again, do we have to spend this money? There should be an ad hoc committee that could look into this and look at all the feasibility studies that have been done over the last many years. But again, nobody wants it. The governors don't want it, governors now and in the past. Executive council doesn't want it. You know, it's a money pit. So that's that. So I hope that you will table that and think of alternatives like the ad hoc committee, which would be very beneficial in getting rid of the money. The other thing is the band shell at Greeley Park. When I was in the Old Man's Club, the Rotary Club, the original one in Nashua, for a dozen years. It's a great club. You've got a couple aldermen who were in it. They were the ones that originally put the money up, the seed money. In fact, Jack Tully
30
told me
seconds.
today that it was in honor of Dr. Adrian LeVake Sr., who had perfect attendance. And instead of just putting it as a line item in the budget, how about some out-of-the-box thinking? This isn't even out of the box, just some creative thinking. You go to both Rotary clubs and you show them the budget to get the band shell up to where it should be and ask them both to contribute. This is something that they spearheaded.
Time.
It's worth a lot to the community, so I would say reach out to the Rotary clubs and get it out of the line as a line item, and maybe they would help to get it done. Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
My name is Laura Coonan. I live at 30 Greenwood Drive. I'm here tonight to say that I do not approve the use of the unassigned fund balance into various capital improvement projects that the Mayor Donches wants. As it is, both Mayor Donches and this board lied to the Nashua taxpayers about the increase in the budget. The increase was 7% and not the 3% that Mayor Donches told residents. The average Nashua taxpayer just got hit with an average of 7.39 increase in their property taxes. This money should have been used to bring down the rate further. However, it's the mayor's motto, screw the taxpayers. The state is stating that it will have a shortfall of 6% that they will pass on to New Hampshire residents. One would think that our city would tighten its belt to ease the burden on the Nashua taxpayers. But hell no. Mayor Donches and this board want to spend every penny they can and not save a dime for a rainy day. Maybe the board is backing the mayor because they were lucky not to get the average of 7.39% on their property taxes. Both Clemens and Wilshire got an increase of 1% increase in their taxes, while the balance of the board got well under 7%. Poor Alderman Jetty was actually the only board member that was hit with a 17.86% on his property taxes, but we all know that he can afford his taxes while many residents cannot. This money should be set aside with the additional unassigned funds collected in order to use these funds to reduce the tax rate on the next tax bill submitted to the taxpayers. I'm asking the city to do what a lot of residents are currently doing, putting off all projects for now. If the mayor wants these projects, then put them in the 2025-26 budget and leave the unassigned funds alone in order to bring down the tax rate. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paula Johnson. I'm still around after 3.5 hours last night. I'm not even elected anymore. Last night I came before you and talked about the senior income limits. And here we are talking tonight about spending our money that should have been applied towards the tax rate. And I'm looking, as I go through the capital improvements, I know that we're talking here about on the rail, the study. And if it has anything to do what was in capital improvements, that 200,000, it was a B3. So I'm sure it had something to do, the 225 to 200,000, a B3. And you know, I look at all these other projects. I was going to talk about the 325,000 for the school deferred maintenance cap study, but I had a chance to talk to Dr. Andre, and I always enjoy talking with him because I get the straight answers, and I trust in him, and I did. That's why I was part of the hiring him. But you know, I take a look, and I see everything that you really want to have done. Well, if the parking garages were so important for over $1 million, then that should have been, of course, in the budget, and it should have been done. But when I take a look at this capital improvement, what the committee talks about all the time, you get these B ratings. Well, if our parking garage is falling apart, where is the maintenance? That's what this board should be asking over and over again. Our parking garages are falling, the stone house is falling apart, the band shell's falling apart. So why don't we have a maintenance plan for this city? You know when we have the maintenance plan? When everything starts falling apart. And then as always, hurry up, we've got to fix it. And then we've got to find the money. So who do we have for maintenance in Public Works to do all this? Who's taking care of the Public Works garage? Because I happen to notice that we want a whole new Public Works garage that's going to be in a plan soon. And so when I take a look at all this, it's outrageous. And then Ms. Bill, who talked about the rail, did anybody bother to go back and take a look at all these resolutions that I talked about? The Telegraph was nice enough to write about me. But did anybody go back and take a look that we're having study after study after study, $225,000, $200,000? Who is coming to Nashua that needs the rail?
30 seconds.
We're taking them out, or they're coming in. We haven't brought in industry to bring people in. People don't go shopping on a rail. I grew up in New York. You're going to have transit police. You're going to have to, oh, wait a second, you're going to have another maintenance plan that we don't have in the city right now. So you're going to have a rail that falls apart, and then you're going to come to us and say it's going to be $5-6 million? This is ridiculous. Get your act together and get maintenance plans here before you ask us for more money as this city falls apart. Mayor, too bad you weren't here last night when I was talking about the seniors are not happy.
Matthew Guthrow, 104 Fawn Lane. Happy New Year, Board of Aldermen. Here we are at this special Board of Aldermen meeting to pass, well, I'm almost embarrassed to say, over $5 billion from the general fund. Well, at least we're not bonding it this time, right? But the concern is, why couldn't we have squeezed this many items into Mayor Donchis' enormous budget without implementing his tax cap? Or at least taken part, if not all of the $5 million from the general fund to pay down some of the ridiculous tax increases you placed upon your constituents. Only after changing the property valuations from 5 years to 2 years without public notice to fund these pet projects of this administration. You know, like the Riverfront project, where this administration is so bold and greedy that they're willing to declare eminent domain against our longtime city stakeholders if they don't play ball. One thing that I found interesting from the close of last year is more than a quarter of you on this dais have been keeping what we see as a dead media alive with your newspaper editorials about how we need to stop the ridiculous amount of spending that occurs here on the Horseshoe. Well, this is where the proverbial rubber meets the road. Yes, we may need to heat this building, but we don't need another study that will tell us that the state legislature, our local taxpayers, won't support a choo-choo that will send jobs south to Massachusetts. Some may say we need a scalpel to carve up some of this legislation. I think we need a butcher's knife. If we're going to make new resolutions in 2025, I think we should start here tonight with making common sense decisions centered in fiscal responsibility that we're going to rein in spending in this city. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to give public comment? Seeing none? Unfinished business resolutions.
R24-115, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $5,245,000 of assigned fund balance into various capital improvement accounts.
Alderman Dowd.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend final approval of R24-115.
Motion is to recommend final passage. Discussion. Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise this evening frustrated with R-24-115. And a lot of my frustrations come from the fact that over the whole summer, we had ourselves an ad hoc bonding committee. And in this committee, we came up with a plan that this board unanimously approved. And in that plan, let me just, I have my sheet with me. We said this year we would be looking in FY25 at about $2.775 million in spending in projects like these. And in the first opportunity we get, like tonight, we have in front of us spending for $5.245 million. When we did the ad hoc committee, there was a lot of give and take. There was a lot of hard decisions we made. We had a lot of robust conversation over which way we felt the city should be going, what direction, and how to prioritize these projects. And in the first opportunity we got, we threw that plan out the window, added in some of what we wanted to do, and then added in a bunch more. Throughout tonight, I look forward to discussing a lot of these projects. And once again, these projects, as I stated when we went through this ad hoc process, are all worthwhile. I think there's validity in every project. It's how we schedule them out, and it's how we expand them. It's not doing them all at once to make a major hit. But it's the plan. We came up with a plan, and we worked hard on this plan. I'm proud of it. I think everybody who was on that ad hoc committee should be proud of that plan, because it showed some fiscal responsibility. By approving this tonight, I think that kind of really derails everything we put in and all the labor we put in over the summer. So I'll leave my comments to that, and I look forward to having some good conversation this evening. Thank you.
Welcome. Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question for Director Sullivan, if you would allow it.
Yes, if he's willing.
I hope so. It's about rail.
I think that's
His
why
favorite
he's-
subject.
I think that's why he's here. And all these other wonderful people that are here.
Madam President, through you to Director Sullivan, would you be able to respond to the members of the public regarding the statements regarding multiple rail studies, why this one's different than the others?
Sure.
Stuff like that.
Madam President, I'd be happy to respond. There were several comments made during public comment this evening, some of which I actually feel are accurate. Those being that this issue has been studied over several years, that being commuter rail extension to the state of New Hampshire, by efforts led by the state of New Hampshire, with some joint participation by the city of Nashua, and it's been looked at several points in time. But what wasn't made clear, in my opinion, in the public comment, is that in each of those iterations of study, there was some variable that was changing with either the scope of the extension, the parties that would participate in an extension of commuter rail, who the operator might be, as was spoken to this evening, being potentially the MBTA. So each of those studies have had their own nuance to them. And I start with that because this is the first time that the city of Nashua has explored the idea of a Nashua First extension, which I would argue to be the most practical and realistic extension of commuter rail to the state of New Hampshire. The previous scopes of work looked at extension all the way up to the city of Concord, through the Capital Corridor. They looked at extension to the Manchester Airport, to the city of Manchester. And those all had their own, again, their own variables and their own factors that led to whether or not those were viable options. But I would say that there was a reason that at each moment there was an effort and a decision to ultimately study, and that's because there was an interest in exploring commuter rail and bringing it to the state. And the primary reason for that was that despite some of the comments tonight about job exit or different forces on the state of New Hampshire that would happen as a result of commuter rail, ultimately there has been significant consensus that extension of commuter rail to the state of New Hampshire, or simply to the city of Nashua, will be an economic driver and will have positive economic impact on the state. I'm not suggesting that there won't be other impacts, but to suggest that they'll all be negative impacts to our community or to the state, it's simply not accurate. So if we accept for the moment that commuter rail extension is something that may not be a need today, but is a need long-term as something that will make the city more dynamic into the future and make it an innovative and leading community across the state of New Hampshire, we start to look at things like commuter rail, things that would bring us to really the next generation of community planning. And I would suggest that the work that's been done over the last year, which was supported by this board, the $75,000 of scope that we undertook with AECOM, led to new conclusions that simply put us in a place where we're not in the same situation where those other studies were done. We now have had direct engagement with the MBTA, direct engagement with the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, in addition to contact with New Hampshire DOT and Mass DOT that indicates that there is an unprecedented level of support for commuter rail extension to the state of New Hampshire, and to Nashua specifically because it represents a positive business case for that extension. So we have that very positive indicator. Those are real conversations we've had over the last year, and those conversations had not happened before. We were sort of going at commuter rail extension not knowing what the landscape looked like when it came to those other agencies. We now know that. We also now know that the layover facility, which was a critical threshold issue for this project, the idea that we had to provide a layover facility, that issue has been resolved. The state of Massachusetts, the MBTA, are taking on that burden in their Iron Horse Park project. They are providing the layover facility that we believed would complicate this project. That issue as well, we have more information on. We have more intelligence. We are in a better position than we were a year ago. So we undertook this initial $75,000 with the AECOM with the idea of having a go, no-go, and I've used this term consistently. But not only do we have very positive indicators to give us, in my opinion, a go or green light here from the agencies, we now have this new data point of no need for a layover, generally very positive ridership numbers, lower capital costs, a proportionally more successful project based on we know. It's difficult for me to stand here, and I realize I'm sounding very much like an advocate, it's difficult for me to stand here this evening, given all of the positive information that we received through our Task 1, Step 1 work, that scope with AECOM, and accept the fact that we're not prepared to take at least this next step of $225,000 to understand, is there actually a real business case for this to be done? I've said to this group before, I think I said it last month, I am not suggesting for a minute that I would recommend, or any staff, nor that the community has had a conversation about building a station or spending millions of dollars on the actual construction work. That's a decision for another time. But what I won't feel good about leaving the chamber this evening, what I won't feel good about is if we haven't had a conversation about whether we need to take at least this next step to understand whether this is actually something the city wants to undertake moving forward. One last comment, and I know I've gone on too long to answer your question, Alderman Moran, but I had an opportunity to chat with our consultant AECOM after the last meeting here because I wanted to make sure I understood the facts. If I'm you and I'm sitting in your seat, I worry we do this work and it will have a shelf life. It will have a ripeness to it. If we decide not to move forward with construction or there's no federal money, this work will expire in a period of years. In speaking with AECOM, they are confident that if this work is done with this $225,000, it may need a refresh if the community needs 10 years to think about the project. No question, things will change. But it will create a structure or a document that we can take to the MBTA, that we can take to our conversations with state agencies, and will need only a very minor refresh in the future should the community choose to move forward. We won't be starting from square one. So this document that we're suggesting be created with this $225,000, it has staying power, it will have validity long term, and more than anything, despite the uncertainty at the state level and federal level around rail, we are part of a longer term conversation here. Just because the federal administration may or may not be supportive of this, and the same for the state executive council and legislature, this is a 5-year effort that we're talking about here. So it's about being prepared in 5 years when we seek construction dollars. It's not about being prepared to construct rail extension today. It's about putting in place the pieces necessary to be prepared in 4 years, 5 years, when perhaps there is more funding available to the project. So thank you for allowing me to speak a little longer than anticipated, but I hope I answered your question.
You did.
Alderman Moran, follow-up?
As always, very astute from community development. I appreciate it. You said AECOM, am I getting that right?
That's correct.
Are they the consultant that we use all the time, or?
Alderman Moran, the consultant AECOM is the consultant that we undertook our initial work with, the $75,000. The reason that we brought them on board primarily was that they had actually taken the state of New Hampshire work to as far as they could take it until the executive council ultimately chose not to extend their contract. They had a level of subject matter expertise and institutional knowledge about the project, and so we chose to work with them again as part of a contract that we brought forward to Finance Committee.
One last question.
Yes.
Why can't this wait till your next budget?
It's a great question, and Madam Chair, if I can answer that.
Yes.
Alderman Moran, it could. It could wait until the next budget, and I recognize that me admitting that right now potentially puts this project in question in front of you this evening, but the reality is if there's some level of discussion or commitment, and I recognize you can't commit to items in the budget this evening, but if that's the discussion this evening, I certainly leave here feeling much more positive about the project. My goal is to move the project forward, whether it be part of the supplemental process or not. I will be back in front of you to talk about this project. It's a priority of the mayor's. We recognize it's a different project than an infrastructure improvement project that may be necessary today, but we feel that it's critical to maintain momentum. And so I'm going to work with this body, of course, to find the right time and the right way to do this. My preference, of course, is to see it included with these supplementals. But we're going to work with you to try and move the project forward in whatever method feels appropriate.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam President. Last question that Alderman Moran asked was kind of along the same lines that I was going to do it. I'm all for the choo-choo project. I think it brings the city into the future, and I think it will constantly make Nashua grow as opposed to letting a city die, which we seem like we're always fighting forces here that want the city to go back 20, 30, 40 years, and I want it to go forward. So I'm for it. My question, and it's not, I don't even know if it's a question, but it's to what Alderman Moran said, if it goes a few more months and gets put into next year's budget, is there any damage to doing that? And again, I know the momentum part. I want the momentum to keep going, but maybe it appeases some people just to get it out of there for the time being and go forward with it in the budget, because I am all for it, but maybe it's something we put in the budget. I don't know. It's just.
Madam President, if I may just quickly respond, same response. It's not preferable because, to your point, Alderman Tebow, there is a momentum loss. We're meeting with a consultant every week, trying to find out what the next objectives are, who we're meeting with next. But can the project take a break? It can. There will be a loss of momentum. But for me to suggest that it can't be picked up again, that wouldn't be fair to this board either, nor to the community. But certainly the preference is to not lose any of that momentum and not try to step back into the project mid-year in the middle of summer, try to get stakeholders back engaged at that point in time. But again, to me, it's critical to move this forward, and if it involves working with the full body to find a way to do that more effectively, I'm happy to participate in that conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alderman Gavea?
Thank you, Madam President. Looking at the ad hoc committee findings that we did, passenger rail is earmarked, if you will, for lack of better terms, for $1.5 million in FY27. Is this $225,000 part of that $1.5 million? And if it isn't, why wasn't this brought up at the ad hoc level? I feel like we've known this was coming.
Yep.
Director Sullivan?
Happy to address that, Alderman Gavea. So to answer your first question, the $225,000 is not included within the 1 point. I believe you said, I think it's
1.5.
1.5. It's not included within that number. The $1.5 million number was actually a number that we believed would be allocated to essentially a design development budget. As we prepared to potentially submit for a federal grant, we would actually need to advance the design to a place where it's 30% designed and we're competitive for federal funding. So that's why that number was in there. Relative to the $225,000, that number was actually, it was discussed at the ad hoc committee very briefly as a capital project, but ultimately I'm going to suggest for the record it was not included in the plan because there had been significant discussion about it in the past, and it was perhaps not looked at as a new project. But it was always certainly my intent, and I think the mayor's as well, to bring this project forward this year. So I'm not sure, and perhaps Director Cummings can remember better than I, but I can't remember why we didn't include it in that list, but we did talk about it that evening. We knew we would have to do that to even entertain the $1.5 million of funding that's a further down the road item.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam President. As most of you know, I did 16 years in the House of Representatives. Let me speak the truth.
nobody up there said it was like a money pit. Okay? What the trouble is, when we first came up with the concept of commuter rail, other municipalities jumped on board, all the way up to ski country. And then they found out what they need to contribute and state funding. And the trouble is, up at the state, they're great taking care of the cows, but terrible in taking care of a city that generates the majority of funds that feed those cows up north. And I remember the gentleman from Bartlett, who was Speaker of the House, he congratulated me on my advocacy for the rail, but he says, no way, because it was never going to go to Bartlett. Well, it never intended to go to Bartlett, you know. And so I like the concept of having a Nashua only. It's about time we kind of went full circle around the wagons to get to that particular point. The other thing is to say there was no committee. Well, I was appointed by Mayor Donnelly Lozo to the Rail Committee. And we've had meetings all the way around right up until today, mostly in through, and they were, you know, hosted by the Nashua Regional Planning Commission. So everything has been discussed and vetted and everything else like that. I mean, yes, the MBTA, but that's got to take, whether you have a pro or con with it, it's got to take something else to change it. Because some time ago, somebody wrote passenger rights for the commuter rail to the MBTA in New Hampshire. You know, we have no other choice as it stands right now. So, looking at it, what are we doing here? We're discussing something that's got to really benefit our constituency. Why can't a young person go down and get a job down in Boston, make the Boston wage, and then get on that train and come home and spend that Boston wage right here in our fair city? And that's really, in essence, what we're talking about. To me, this has been a prudent investment. It'll improve this city. It may even, you know, help out with the tax burden and put the value up more on some of the housing and stuff like that, as one of the studies did say, and Mr. Sullivan could probably opine to that a little bit more. But the thing is, it starts in a way tonight. This thing has been assembled by bits and pieces and working at this. So I am personally going to vote in favor of this. This is another piece of the chessboard being moved to get to this commuter rail, which I think will be a big godsend for the city. We can do like what some of our predecessors did. Cut out things in the budget, let things leak, let parking garages fall down around people's necks. Or not buy lawnmowers because we didn't fund a surf account. I've seen it. But I think right now, under this administration, I'm proud to say, a lot of the buck stops right here. We've kicked the can down the road. We can't kick it any farther. It's time to come up with some good ideas, and commuter rail is one of them, to benefit the economics of this particular city. Thank you, Madam President.
Welcome. Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I wanted to speak briefly to rail and then kind of a larger picture. Question to Director Sullivan. Since this is, I understand it's a Nashua First initiative, but I can't help but think, and I'm ambivalent about rail. I could do a pro-con on a sheet of paper, and I could do good, bad on both sides, and I think it'd be pretty even, I think. But when I think about this money and I think about the Nashua First Initiative, I cannot help but think, and Alderman O'Brien brought it up about the Nashua Regional Planning Committee. Folks from Amherst, Hollis, Merrimack, Hudson, et al. Are going to use this train should it ever get built. Have we gone to these other communities with our handout to say, we want to push this, could you help us?
So I'm going to respond to that by saying, I don't believe we're in a position to do that today. I don't believe that we have the data in hand, the business case, at a relatively accurate level to actually go to them and answer tough questions about why there is that benefit to the community. We know it's there. We can feel it. I feel it the same way that you do, that I know that folks in Amherst or Milford or wherever it might be, they're going to drive to the station if it exists. No question about it. It's not going to be for everybody, but many will. But I don't have the business case right now in my hand to hand over to them when they ask me, what is this thing going to cost? What is the actual ridership? I have an extrapolation based on the proportions that are in the work that was done to date that we presented over recent months, but I expect their questions are going to go beyond that, particularly if we're saying, are you willing to financially contribute to this initiative? And so, I have not felt that we were in a position to have that level of conversation. What we have been doing is trying to work through the National Regional Planning Commission and the Rail Committee to start to have some of the inroads to that conversation and build the case regionally. But it's not just going to be the Amhersts, the Milfords. It's also going to be our neighbors to the south in Tingsboro. Perhaps even if the station is located next to a certain large commercial facility that we have in our south end. It's going to be some of the other Massachusetts communities in the Middlesex County that might be users of this. There's going to have to be a need at some point, and I would suggest it's at the point of construction, not necessarily at this stage, where there needs to be some level of coalition building, and there will ultimately need to be an authority or some entity formed to actually take over this project and move it forward. To me, that is the moment where we're going to need the financial buy-in from the other communities, and we haven't really had an occasion or necessarily the backup, in my opinion, to have that conversation today. I would suggest that if we were to go to those communities, of course they would want more information, but they would generally say, yes, we'd love to see commuter rail in Nashua. Faced with the question of providing funding from their budget today, I expect their answer would be no. I expect they would need more information. We have these conversations today when we get money from the town of Merrimack, the town of Hudson, for our transit system. They ultimately budget for it, and they do pay us, but every year it's a reminder of the criticality of the service that we need to provide to the community. And every year, and I've been to these town council meetings, they want the data to prove it, and I don't think we have that in hand yet, but I think we could have that if we undertook this work, and I truly believe that. We simply don't have the data necessary.
Alderman Sullivan.
Could I make a larger comment about why we're here all tonight for this resolution? Because I did some number crunching, and I thought it important to kind of pull back a little bit. And I just have some notes here that I want to refer back to make sure I have it all right. But our 2025 budget that we approved back in June was $456 million. Now, depending on whatever you want to look at, between the approved fiscal year budget, that was a 10.8% lift, or the supplemental appropriations that we added last fiscal year, it was a 4.5% lift. So either way, that's what we're looking at. Now, the inflation rate in the U.S. was 2.7%, so our budget was ahead of inflation. So we came right up against the spending cap. We had to exempt money so we could do the projects that we have. We've been supplementally appropriating money ever since June. And should this resolution pass as is, the add-ons from this year's budget will be $33 million, which is an additional 7% added to the approved budget back in June. So if we're here in June and we don't appropriate any more money, the budget will be up 7% over last year. That's 456 million to 489 million. So I know most of us are probably going to run for reelection in the fall. And if you're out there door knocking and someone asks you a pointed question about what have you done to keep my taxes as low as possible, think about that as you vote on that tonight. With that said, I would like to ask a question through you to Mayor Donchis, if I could.
Sure.
Thank you. Mayor Donchis, as we are now in January, what guidance are you giving for your departments for fiscal year 2026 for their budget increases for next year? I feel that's a very important piece of information to have as we make decisions.
Well, before I get to that, I mean, I don't think the numbers you have given are correct. The 456 probably includes the federal grants and everything like that?
It's the total all-in budget.
Right. But it doesn't include the part of the budget that is really paid for by local taxes. I saw this as an extension of the ad hoc committee. I mean, what the ad hoc committee said, the way that we began this was Alderman Wilshire and I were looking at all of the potential projects that the city was facing, and it comes up to $300 or $400 million. Now, these are the larger projects, not million-dollar items, $2 million and up. And we said, we can't possibly afford $300 or $400 million, and you, the Board of Aldermen, agreed. So we appointed an ad hoc committee, and I want to thank everybody who I agree did a very good job and worked very hard there. And with the recommendation that they develop a priority list that could be paid for with $30 million a year in borrowing or bonding over the next 5 years. The committee did that, and in fact improved upon it by suggesting we do $25 million per year and leave some room in case things came up which we didn't expect. Great. But as I understood the work of the committee, they also very clearly said we should do smaller projects in cash. And so we undertook to follow that recommendation. And of course, the biggest cash project which we approved, which you approved, was $3.9 million for a single project, which was the police training facility, the upgrade of the former Public Works office for police training. A project certainly I totally agreed with. I agreed with the conservative approach of paying with cash, and everybody approved that. Or I don't know if the vote was unanimous, but certainly enough votes were there to approve that, and we've undertaken that project. Now we've looked at other projects that I think the committee said we didn't look at these smaller projects as part of the ad hoc process. The instruction we got was do these projects in cash rather than borrowing money. Great. If we get to the presentation that the directors are waiting to make, I mean, I think you're going to hear that a lot of this, not all of it, we spent a lot of time talking about rail, but a lot of it is similar to the Stellos project, the Stellos problem. Because if these things are not fixed, they might fail. Now, when it came to Stellos, we never got that kind of clear warning. We certainly were told, it was certainly said in June and in the year before, hey, there's some problems with the field. Something should be done one of these days. Okay. And we, I think, planned to do it in the fall of 2024, after the athletic season was over. But it didn't last. It failed. So we had to step in, and it was an embarrassment. I mean, there's a lot of people who could have done something different, probably everyone in this room, over at the school department and everything else. But no one ever came to us and said clearly, if you don't do this, this needs to be done now, because if you don't, we might not make it through the fall. Well, with a lot of these projects, I am giving you that warning right now. If some of these projects are not done now, they might fail over the winter. These buildings, these heating HVAC systems, they might fail. And you can decide not to fund them to save money, just like we did with Stellos. And the day might come when they fail. And if they do, you need to take responsibility. So I think you should listen to the directors, see what they have to say, and decide whether you want to support these projects or not. Maybe no. Fine. Then don't, fine. But we're just putting these in front of you because we're telling you some of these things might fail. Others are needed to license the dam. If we want to continue that as a revenue source, we've got to do a fish ladder. Other things we have matching. We're getting federal and state money. If we don't spend the local stuff, we don't get it. Okay, well then we refuse it. We refuse the grant money. I mean, you should just listen to the individual projects. As of course, it's all been reviewed at a public hearing previously, but listen to them and decide whether it's worth it in your view. I agree with, we want to save as much as we can, definitely. Are these projects you want to save money on? And do you want to accept the consequences of not doing the projects if things don't go our way? Now, back to Alderman Sullivan's name. We haven't come up with back to Alderman Sullivan's question. I haven't come up with a number. I mean, I'm thinking we should ask for no new people in any department, because we had, a number of new positions, or some new positions in the last budget in various departments, including public safety, principally public safety, I would say. But no new positions, and I don't know the number, but somewhere in the range of 3 to 4% we should ask for. But when we've asked for guidelines like that in the past, a lot of the independent departments have proposed higher budgets than that, and the Board of Aldermen has approved those higher budgets, higher than the guidelines I proposed. So it's easy, I think that you should listen to the projects. We should have compromise. We should have accommodation. We should have collaboration. And I'm always willing to compromise on basically anything I propose. That was my business. I mean, when I was as a lawyer, we settle cases 95% of the time. Every time we're in the business of compromise. I still am. So I think we go ahead and try to get a budget at 3 or 4% in response to your question, no new positions, and see if we can get the departments to go along with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't expect that we were going to hear from the directors, but I guess that's why they're actually here. I think what we should do is take this resolution and go down the list. Is everybody okay with that? Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are 14 items on here. And I'm certainly willing to listen to anyone's comments on any one of them and decide if we want to remove any of them by a vote of the board. But at the end of the night, some of these are critical to the departments, I'm sure you'll hear in a moment. And some of them, if we don't pass them, we lose money because they're matching funds and we may lose a significant amount of money. So I think that we need to listen, and at the end of the evening, we need to pass some variation of this legislation so that we can get these critical things done.
Okay, I think what I'm going to do is, I think we're going to go down the list. Okay, we're going to start with the first, parks, $75,000. And Director Conant, would you care to join us?
Thank you, Madam President. May I approach? I have a slide deck that may help with comments
Yeah,
if they
sure.
go on. Thanks.
Tim.
Oh, you know what? I'll
Do it.
Don't get upset.
Good try. Good try.
Yeah. I'm trying to get it to 6. So get this. That's okay.
Don't hit X. Let's choose the, yeah.
Again, thank you, Madam President. Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. What I did this evening was I refreshed the PowerPoint presentation that was given at the public hearing back at the end of November, added some additional details based on the feedback and commentary that was given at that time to hopefully address and satisfy some of the questions that arose at that time that led to the tabling of the resolution. I know we've gotten a little ahead of ourselves this evening, so some of this prior slides may not be applicable at this time. So I'm just going to skip ahead to the various projects at hand and try to expedite this conversation this evening, because I know we've already been here for just about an hour. So one of the comments that were made a moment ago that I do think it's important to touch on, which is this approach has a neutral tax impact. We're using surplus funds and we're using it on cash for capital improvements. The goal is to not affect the property tax, which you could, again, suggest is a more conservative approach in how we do it. That's obviously, a suggestion that I'm making to you all to keep in the back of your mind. We can do it differently in the future if folks like, but that was the what I thought would be the more practical approach here, and that's why we did what we did. Comment a second ago about the plan and trying to stay true to the plan. So we actually tried to do that as much as possible. I heard a $2-ish million figure kicked around, but this is right from the Excel spreadsheet we were using at the time, and we were at $4.2 million. And yes, we are $1 million higher than what was on here. This was our best guess at the time. And, since that conversation, and then based off of the surplus revenue that we had, I made a recommendation to put a couple additional projects forward. Case in hand is the Pine Hill station for a $100,000 feasibility study. Now, that is referenced here in another part of the ad hoc committee, but it never rose to the level of getting programmed within the 5-year window because there wasn't enough detail or information or community input to move that or advance that capital project, which we believe will be substantial. It's potentially a reconstruction of a fire station. And I also heard during the ad hoc process that we wanted to move away from just going straight to debt authorizations and actually have a level of design done in advance using cash, and to have a more accurate number before we bond and take on that type of obligation. And so putting this $100,000 on top of the 4.2, and again, I'm using this just as an example, is again a way to try to advance us in our capital project needs. And then the last comment is everything here was talked about during the ad hoc process, and at that time, and again, this Excel spreadsheet noted it, it was talked about the fact that we had missed the FY25 budget window, and we would need to do it during the surplus process in the fall. And so I tried to stay very true to that. If we don't do that and you want to do it in the FY26 budget, I just remind you that we have all these other itemized lists of projects that we're going to need to address that are going to get pushed out or pushed off or whatever the case may be. These needs aren't going away, which brings me to the last point that I just want to make this evening, which is since our time of doing some of the work at the ad hoc level, I've revisited this need of capital projects with all the major departments here in the city. And I've highlighted some of the newer projects that have been discussed that are not actually on that list, but are major needs that I want to make sure everyone is aware of. A case in point, in a conversation with the police, again, just within the last 4 or so weeks, we learned that there's going to need to be a roof replacement. That wasn't part of the ad hoc committee, but it is absolutely a need that we've identified that we're going to need to address, whether we address it next year, the year after, whatever the case may be. It's imminent, and we're going to need to reconcile that. And my point is these needs are not going away. The list will only get longer, and I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. So with that being said, just to talk about the resolution at hand, we have, as an overview, before we hand it off to the individual directors who are here that can speak to the itemized issues, which some of you may have heard in the past, because some of these, because these items were discussed at the public hearing. We have $75,000 for the epoxy floors of the swimming pools. We have Greeley Park improvements of $1.3 million. We have hydro project design improvements for $500,000. We have commuter rail project feasibility study at $225,000. We have transit capital match at $125,000. We have deferred capital maintenance for HVAC for $100,000. We have that Pine Hill Station feasibility study at $100,000. We have IT equipment replacement for police at $45,000. We have deferred capital maintenance study for the schools at $325,000. We have the Hunt building renovation. That's an HVAC project. That's a Windows project for $500,000. We have Kronos time clocks for $150,000. We have City Hall HVAC improvements for $1 million. Then we have 2 transportation projects that are match monies for federal monies that we could get to do infrastructure improvements. Spruce Street Connector at $500,000 and the Heritage Rail Trail East at $300,000. So, Madam President, I've asked Lisa Director Photo, to join us to talk in a little bit more detail about the Greeley Park upgrades. If we could spend a few minutes on that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cummings. I'm going to ask Brian Conant and our park superintendent and also Mark Saunders, our deputy city engineer, to join me this evening. I'd like to first speak to you regarding the Stonehouse. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about the history, because I'm not sure that everybody's familiar with the history. If you are, forgive me, but I'd just like to provide a little. The land comprising Greeley Park was deeded to the city in 1801 by Joseph Greeley. And in 1908, a gentleman by the name of John E. Cotton donated $5,000, which was matched by the city, to create a public park. The Stonehouse, or as they called it, the Rest House, was constructed in 1911 using those funds. So the Stonehouse is 114 years old. So I'd say we did a pretty good job maintaining it. We got 114 years out of it. The bathrooms were expanded in the 1950s. It's really a historical gem for the Nashua community. It's likely the most photographed building in the city. Prom, wedding couples, families all line up to have their picture taken in front of the Stonehouse. And I'm going to throw Mark Saunders under the bus just for a minute, because he has family pictures that were taken in front of the Stonehouse. The residents who use the grills and the adjacent Stonehouse restrooms are primarily low income, and this has been confirmed by Placer AI data. Greeley Park is not a neighborhood park. It's a community park that is enjoyed by residents throughout the city, and a wonderful place for residents who don't have a yard or may not have a grill in their backyard. I think are focused on the Stonehouse as being a bathroom facility. It's much more than a bathroom facility. It's a facility, a beautiful facility that's enjoyed by many and has for many years. One of the things that I do want to mention is that the Stonehouse bathrooms are not ADA compliant. They never have been. The estimate for the repairs of the Stonehouse is $995,000. Roughly half of that would be for the roof, and the other half to repair the bathrooms and make them ADA compliant to serve our disabled residents. Now, I say roughly because that is an estimate. This engineering estimate was created by Wright Pierce, a reputable firm that the city has done a significant amount of work with. And again, we won't know for sure what the actual cost is until it is actually put out to bid. But the current condition, the rough-cut rafters show heavy deterioration. The roof sheathing of the roof is deteriorating with water damage and visible rot. The fascia board is rotting, and there is lead paint that is flaking off the building. There are missing or cracked tiles that have led to water damage. The needed repairs, the existing tile roof requires complete replacement. The roof should be removed with necessary repairs or replacement to the rafters, roof underlayment, and trim. The terracotta tiles should be replaced on all sides of the main roof. And the historical nature of the building warrants restoring to its original condition. As far as the bathrooms, the current condition, the fountain is not working. The electrical panel is heavily corroded in need of replacement. Bathroom is failing. It's unventilated, resulting in a damp environment. Exposed plumbing is susceptible to damage from public interference. Partitions and fixtures are damaged and are not, again, ADA compliant. The needed repairs, all the bathroom fixtures, partitions, plumbing, windows, doors, concrete floor, and electrical systems need to be repaired. All exterior doors and windows should be painted to match the existing colors of the rear wall. We need to install a new electrical panel and wiring to support external needs, including for the wading pool and lighting. We need to install bathrooms that are compliant with accessibility standards, including a new ramp handrail, concrete floor, bathroom stall, and fixtures. As I was looking at the Stonehouse and contemplating what I was going to say this evening, I remembered a few years back, more than a few years probably, that I met with Mike O'Malley. I don't know if you know who he is. He's an actor. He's also a Nashua native. And one of the things that he said to me at Holman Stadium was, every time he comes home and he brings new people to Nashua, he takes them to the Stonehouse to show them the Stonehouse. So it really is a historical landmark and an important part of the city's history. And I hope to see current and future residents continue to enjoy the facility along with those with disabilities. Okay, that's the Stonehouse. The Greeley Park, the rest will be quick. The Greeley Park band shell is 35 years old. It's utilized by many charitable organizations, including our own recreation department, almost every weekend during spring right through the fall. The current condition, the metal frame is faded and rusted. The side panels are made of plywood and just have rotted over the years. They just need to be removed and replaced. The roof needs to be replaced, and the exterior steel decking needs scraping, priming, and finish painting. And the estimate for that is around $150,000. And again, I say estimate because that has not been put out to bid. The wading pool, I just want to speak just for a moment about the pools in our city. One of the things, aside from snow, that keeps me up at night is making sure that our pools are staffed in the summertime. The 3 pools, and this pool included, I would add it as the 4th, are critical to many of the residents in our community. That is all they have. That is all they have. That is their summer, is our pools. So we need to maintain them and we need to staff them. I think it's critical to the community. This current wading pool was built in 1923, and it has been utilized heavily since then by young children. We have repaired it over the years, but it's cracking. And over the last several years, we've had to close it several times over the summer to try to repair it and keep it running. We just can't do that anymore. It needs to be replaced. And a completely new wading pool would be made, and again, we're going to try to, because of its historical nature, replicate it as much as we can, but it would be made of gunite, newer materials, new concrete decking, and a new intake and discharge water line. And that is estimated at about $100,000. Our three larger pools, Centennial, Rotary, and Crown Hill, all have locker rooms, which you're aware of. They have currently have concrete floors. There are some safety issues associated with those concrete floors. They're cracking, so that's creating a tripping hazard. The concrete is also very slippery. So what we want to do is and for health reasons too, that's not great to have all the cracks in there collecting bacteria and everything. What we'd like to do for all three pools is put an epoxy down that would help to eliminate the cracks. There'd be no tripping hazards, and they also would create a surface that is not slippery, so kids would be less likely to fall in the locker rooms after getting out of the shower or the pool when they're wet. So, and that would be a total cost of $75,000 for all three pools. So, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Madam President, we have Matt Sullivan, who could speak to the hydroelectric project design. We already discussed commuter rail, but then there's also the capital match contemplated all in the current resolution. And Director Sullivan, I'll move the slides as you indicate, if you'd like.
I should only do an hour on commuter rail, most likely, so it should be good. No, I will be very brief. Obviously, thank you for the chance to speak earlier. The first project on our list this evening is one that I think is familiar to folks. It was contemplated during the ad hoc capital process. These are required improvements to both the Jackson Mills and the Mine Falls hydroelectric facilities. These improvements, estimated to be at about $7 to $7.5 million in construction costs, are being required as part of our relicensing of those two facilities to operate as hydroelectric generation facilities. As you know, we're replacing the Jackson Mills turbine, and so that was triggered through that process. And similarly, we're relicensing Mine Falls, and we've had a similar requirement put in place by the federal agencies. In alignment with what Director Cummings discussed and what's also been discussed this evening about the idea of trying to use cash to fund design work, we're requesting $500,000 be authorized as part of the supplemental legislation to begin to hone the actual construction number for the fish improvements at both of these facilities. This is a regulatory requirement. We are going to be required to do this work. Frankly, we're even a bit behind schedule in the eyes of the federal government, but we need to get working on this, and we've begun to engage with consultants about undertaking this work. Again, the idea is that we will complete $500,000 of work authorized here. We'll then have a more clear sense of the construction amount, and then we would come back in the future for authorization, likely through debt authorization in the form of a bond. Happy to answer any questions about this. As I think I said before, if you ask me about details about how the fish passage systems operate, likely going to have to get back to you, but happy to answer questions that I can. Director Cummings, I'm ready to go on to the next one. This is just detail of what we anticipate the scope to be, but again, these numbers will change based on the work that we do here. Commuter rail, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has, but I believe I've covered this and what the step one, task two work includes, new ridership forecast, capital costs, and operation and maintenance costs, and I've discussed the coordination with the agencies to date and where we would go from here. Again, Director Cummings, I think we can move on, but I'm happy to answer questions about this. And finally, as with many of the transit projects that are brought forward to this body and other committees, we have received multiple grant awards through federal and state sources. This particular match money that we're seeking is relative to a Federal Transit Administration grant. These are supplemental monies to match money that's come in for really 4 different projects. One, to overhaul several of our buses. They need sort of midlife overhauls that are more comprehensive in nature. We've received funding already to do that, but we need to fill in the match gap. Additionally, we're going to be replacing many of our bus seats that are currently a cloth material and very difficult to take care of. We're going to be replacing those with a harder but padded surface for maintenance reasons and to ensure that they're more durable moving forward. We're going to be installing automatic passenger counters within our buses. Our buses currently count manually, and so that's been very challenging for us when reporting to the federal government and talking to you about ridership. And then lastly, we are seeking some additional funding. The 4th project is just for You're aware, if you're on the Finance Committee, of some of the work that we're doing around our new software implementation at the transit center and on our buses, making the routes and the vehicles more accessible to passengers, and hopefully the system more reliable and accessible for us as well. So happy to answer any questions about these that you might have, but you can see the split of how we intend to use the $125,000 been requested here. It's all match money for grants that we've received to do this work. And that's all I have.
Do we want to go through the presentations and then ask questions?
Sure.
How about if we do that?
Excellent. Thank you, Madam President. Next, we would
Thank
have, next we have Chief Buxton, who's here. And there's two items that's contemplated in the resolution, and I'll leave it to the chief to speak in more detail, specifically about the HVAC improvements, but the relative to the feasibility / concept drawings for $100,000 for the Pine Hill Station. Again, this wasn't explicitly clear in the ad hoc plan per se, because we had identified it as a need, and we don't have an exact dollar amount for the fire station at this time for the replacement. But what we do know is it's something that's going to need to be programmed over the next 3 to 5 years, and to provide this body and the administration and the command staff at the fire department. I saw this as an appropriate use of the $100,000 based on the fact that we had revenues coming in higher than anticipated, and I thought this would help us get some information so all the various stakeholders could understand what the potential expenditure could be and what the design could be for this need. As some of you may or may not know, the Pine Hill Station is in very tough shape. I think we will hear more about that over the coming weeks. But with that being said, I wanted to start planning and getting ahead for it. So that's that particular item, Madam President, and I'll leave it to the chief to speak about the HVAC improvements.
Chief Buxton.
Thank you very much, Steve Buxton, Fire Chief, City of Nashua. I'll speak to the deferred capital maintenance program request for $100,000. When we did our capital improvements budget proposal this year, our request was for $175,000 for deferred maintenance to our facilities. As many of you know, in 2021, we embarked on a master plan study of NFR in general. One of the highest priorities that was identified in that study is that the City of Nashua should plan for significant investment in fire station maintenance and renovations in the coming years. We currently manage 8 facilities that range in age from 132 years old to 10 years old. As you may also be aware, we have a facility study that we are undertaking with Meng Analysis that will assist us in developing a plan that will identify areas for renovation and gauge the life expectancy of our systems and facilities while setting priorities for us. The requested funding for an additional $100,000 is because in the capital improvements budget, we were awarded $50,000 of the $175,000 that we were requested. It's specifically earmarked for HVAC improvements because we currently bleed a lot of money in that area in all of our systems. Today, I have about $60,000 worth of maintenance work that needs to be done to our HVAC systems alone. These systems have been identified as a priority in the facility study that's currently taking place. We additionally have an HVAC line in our operating budget. There's a $75,000. That is already $13,000 underwater just due to PM work that has taken place and significant repairs and projects that need to take place this year. Our capital fund is currently $68,000 in this area of deferred maintenance because we were able to roll some money over from last year. But as I told you, we have an immediate need of $60,000 without addressing any controller issues that we currently have. This is just one aspect of deferred maintenance at Nashua Fire Rescue. So we respectfully ask the deferred maintenance funding to be approved. I'd like to thank Director Cummings for addressing the feasibility and concept study for us.
And then, Madam President, I've asked the fire chief to entertain coming before the Board of Aldermen sometime over the next couple months to provide a more robust update once the facility study is done. Because I think everyone would find that very, very informative.
Okay.
And then next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Next, Madam President, I asked Chief Rook to join us this evening. There's 2 particular items that they've requested, and in full disclosure, this item wouldn't necessarily be on the ad hoc committee list. This was an additional item, but the need was apparent, and it came about after we had finished the ad hoc process. And again, with the surplus funds that we had, it seemed prudent to add it to this list now. So I'd ask Chief Rook to speak to these items.
Good evening. Chief Kevin Rourke, Chief of Police. First item is worth $15,000, our phone logger system. It's a system that is an essential tool that is used to record 911 calls and all non-emergency calls received on our business line. In certain circumstances, the information collected is required by law to fulfill 91A requests and for court evidence purposes. It's also a system that we use if we get an emergency call and we have to review. If someone called up in the historic, given an address that's, I've seen that many times where we have to go back in and listen to the call to get the correct address to respond. The system is currently functioning off a Windows 2008 server software, equivalent of Windows 7. And it's at the end of its life. Software updates and upgrades are no longer available for it. If we lose the system, which we have for a couple days, we lose our entire call recording capability. Updating the system is also an integral part of our larger plan and goal to update our department-wide phone system for the purpose of improving reliability and functionality. The camera system is worth $30,000. Our current department camera system is currently failing due to the age of the system. Several of the cameras are now producing reduced quality images that are blurry and pixelated in appearance. The control boxes for other cameras have failed completely and are not repairable. Repairable parts and upgrades to the current system are no longer available because the company NXT went out of business. As a result, we are in a position where we need to install a new system before we experience additional and more widespread failures. These cameras are important. They are used to monitor our lobby, exterior lots, grounds, and holding cells for a variety of security and legal purposes. For example, per the FBI and CJIS, a compliance security policy, Section 5, physical security, talks about we are required to monitor and record videos of public access areas and jail cells. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
And so, Madam President, I also have asked the schools to come. I believe Superintendent Andre is here, and so is Sean Smith. And I am just quickly changing a typo that I had. I quickly typed 350. I meant to type 325. I apologize. But this is a request that the schools have discussed with this body on many occasions and was part of the ad hoc process.
Thank you. Maury Randrade, Superintendent of Schools, Director Smith, Director of Plant Operations. So again, this is I just want to commend Mr. Smith and Director Smith over the number of years of really putting together a plan of all our projects going forward. What this study would end up doing is really memorializing and providing a third-party objective view on the priorities of the school district. Mr. Smith has some more information on the scope of the work.
Thank you. Sean Smith, Plant Operations Director. To put things in perspective, we have 18 schools and 2 other facilities that are supportive. We have a total of about 2.1 million square feet. When I checked a number of years ago, that was probably between 2/3 and 3/5 of the total square footage in the city. Our facilities are on over 380 acres of land, and I just did this number today. You take the start of every single school in the city and just average them. Our average school was built in 1967. That's, what, 50 years ago? 60? So there's definite need. If we were to just take the numbers that it cost recently to build McCarthy Middle School, extrapolate that over the square footage, you're over $1 billion. So there's quite a bit of infrastructure that we have to invest in and to maintain. So those are just the sound numbers. The student population, as you know, has gone from about 13,000 down to just under 10,000 over the last 25 years. I have some new glasses here, so I'm still doing this. We have 4 elementary schools that are at or near the time when we normally expect to be renovating schools. That time period is usually 30 years. So Mount Pleasant was last touched in the late 1980s. And then New Searles, Bicentennial, and Crisp were touched in the mid-1990s. So they're all already at that 30-year point. So there's a bit of a misnomer. It's not a deferred maintenance study. If it was just a study of deferred maintenance and putting together a list, that's what I do. I do it every year. This is to take a more comprehensive look to assess every single school, to assess every single building system in the school. When I talk systems, I talk about the HVAC systems, the roofing systems, the grounds, the building envelope. All those things are systems that we bring in professionals that deal with stuff all the time, and they will assess those, give us their opinion on the expected life of every single one of those components, and that's how you build a facility master plan. Then you talk to, I'm an engineer, then you talk to the educators and say, what do you foresee in the future? Where do you think education is going to be in 20 or 30 years? And what changes do we have to make to the current facilities to facilitate that? So I view this facility master plan as just a coming together of the community to not only assess the condition of the schools we have now, but where we're going to go in the future. It'll involve them talking to educators, have them talking to the mayor and his staff, to all of you at some point, just to get your input. So it's just not trivial deferred maintenance plan. It's much, much more than that. And I think it's something that's well overdue. I was very happy to see the fire department do this a couple of years ago. Actually helped them in crafting that RFP back then. And it's time we do the same thing for the school department.
Thank you.
Madam President, we have Administrative Services has 3 items contemplated within the resolution. We have the Hunt Building renovations for $500,000. I've asked Mr. Roach to come this evening and speak. We have Nick Misevich, who can speak to the Kronos time clocks. And then City Hall HVAC upgrades, we have Ms. Deshays, who's with us, who can speak to those needs. And so if I could, I would ask Mr. Roach to join us to talk about the Hunt Memorial Building.
Hi, good evening. Amy DeRoche, Administrative Services. The funds that are part of this legislation will be the last piece of the puzzle that we need to complete or actually start our renovations to the building. It will take care of the windows that need to be replaced in the tower. We're a bit behind. It is a 6-month lead time for us to order those windows, so we're kind of under the gun to get those in before the rains come, next year. It's also going to take care of the structural, there's a pipe in the chimney that needs to be structurally repaired. We have 2 main doors that need to be replaced as they're completely rusted through, and you can see daylight through them. And we also have completed those 3 minor things. The boiler expansion tank, the hardwood floors have been redone, and the heat has been restored in the bathrooms. But it's the main cost of this project is the windows, and we need this money to be approved this evening in order to move forward. We would greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have HVAC upgrades that I'd like Ms. Deshays to speak to, and then we have Mr. Misevich, who could speak after relative to the time clocks.
Jennifer Deshays, Risk Manager for Risk Management. This proposed project would eliminate 2 natural gas-fired steam boilers and outdated air conditioning units in portions of City Hall. The design is a combination of energy-efficient electric reheats and ductwork and heat pumps that will condition spaces with both heating and cooling. Approximately 60% of our HVAC system was upgraded in 2011, a cost of just over $1 million. This upgrade will replace the remaining 40% of the building that is on steam, that is at end of life. This project is critical One of the steam boilers that we currently have is no longer working, so we don't have a backup to an already aged system. The steam distribution piping that we have is original to the building, and we're currently experiencing pinholes in multiple pipes. Parts are getting, they're non-existent, basically, harder and harder to find. If our remaining boiler goes down, we won't have heat in 40% of our building. This project will reduce the consumption of natural gas. There will be an energy rebate opportunity, and it will have a reduction in repair and maintenance costs that we're currently experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, I've asked Mr. Misevich to talk about the time clocks.
Thank you, Director Cummings. Nick Misevich, Chief Information Officer for the City of Nashua. These time clocks that we currently possess have been announced to be end of life this year. So this project has been on the plan for the past couple of years because we knew it was coming. Now is the time. What makes it imperative is the version of Kronos that we are currently using has also been announced to be end of life this year. And I have been dealing back and forth with UKG upper management, voicing my displeasure of being forced to go to the cloud. But that is the move that the company is making and is forcing all of their customers to go to the cloud. So we have a choice of not going to the cloud and then losing support for our software, meaning that if the software fails, we can't pay people. So it's we're at the end of the rope on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, Madam President, I have Mark Saunders coming from engineering to speak about two specific transportation and community infrastructure projects that are, these are the federal grant projects that are passed through the state of New Hampshire, where we get 80% of these infrastructure projects are paid for at the federal level, and we would have a 20% commitment.
Thank you. Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. So as Director Cummings mentioned, these are grant-funded projects where there is an 80-20 match. Both of these projects I'm going to speak to tonight, they do go hand in glove. The first project is the Spruce Street Connector. This project is a 1,500-foot, 10-foot wide multi-use path. These are both bike and pedestrian projects. The grants that support these are CMAQ and TAP, which is congestion mitigation and air quality, as well as transportation alternatives. As shown on the slide, this is a multi-use path, and this is going to go from the rail trail, which I'll speak to next, all the way up to Spruce Street, across Spruce Street, and down away to the Riverwalk. Can we go to the next slide? This is the second project. This is the Heritage Rail Trail East. This is almost a mirror image of the rail trail that's already there along West Hollis Street. This is going to go from Main Street to Denton Street. This is also a 10-foot wide paved path for pedestrian and bicyclists. This project is entering final design, and it's about 3/4 of a mile long. Along with this project, this does look to rehabilitate the Commercial Street pedestrian bridge. And I think that's about the gist of it, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Madam President, that wraps up the more formal comments and touched upon every single itemized item that's contemplated in the resolution. I will just close my comments by saying that we're using monies from the assigned fund balance, and that remains healthy. I mentioned a couple times this evening already that our revenues surpassed expectations, so it's that surplus that we are using to pay for some of these projects. We've already put $6 million towards the tax rate, so that's more than we're actually asking for tonight in our capital improvement project priority list here. But we were able to do that because, as I mentioned, we've done some good financial planning. we're able to maintain that assigned fund balance at a healthy figure and percentage as necessary for our auditors and our crediting agencies that like to look at that. And so it's our recommendation that we move forward with this supplemental appropriation this evening to do these capital improvement projects. They are necessary. As you've heard this evening, a lot of this is overdue. And I just want to remind you all, as I started the conversation this evening, we have more capital improvement projects coming that are going to be contemplated in future years. And just in FY26, we already have a target of about $4-ish million identified through the ad hoc process, and that doesn't contemplate any of the newer items that I had mentioned at the start of this evening that I had discussed with some of our departments. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration this evening. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I just want to, for the record, to recognize that Alderwoman Timmons arrived at 7:27 and Alderman Lopez arrived at 7:37. So thank you. I'm going to start where my list was. My list was to recognize Alderman Dowd and then Alderman Tebow.
I think I already spoke.
Oh, okay. Then I'm going to go to Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I think when we have these things, it's, you know, I think about it like city being a car or a house, right? Every year there's something that goes down. City is so big to have a maintenance plan, or we should have maintenance plans, but no matter how good our maintenance plan or how much we save and put away, it's either going to impact the taxes or it's going to impact not being able to do something. I think if this happened last year, if we had this exact thing last year and Stellos was on there and people were like, Stellos could, you know, it could be a problem. It might fail in the fall, it might not. Same people that are screaming about why didn't we get it fixed early might have been the people that said, why is this on here? We shouldn't be doing this. So that's what these things are, right? Things that could be impactful, could fall apart, could not work, could cause injuries. You know, I think about the stone house, there could be injuries in there, in the bathrooms with the floor. One thing I'd like to see, and when alderwomen bring up numbers of any sort, I mean, I've done some data analysis in the past. I can make numbers look a certain way. So when we have one alderman saying the numbers of this and we have the mayor saying the numbers of this, I'd like to see someone from maybe that does the numbers come forward and say, that's right, that's wrong, this is wrong. Because anybody can come up here. I can come up here and say, hey, the tax rate went down last year, and someone's going to have to prove me wrong. If they don't prove me wrong, people hear that and they go, oh, the tax rate went down. That's not true, right? Or maybe it is true. We don't know. Someone's got to prove that. Someone had brought up earlier that, hey, you guys are all being reelected. You got to start thinking about reelection. I'm not here to worry about my votes. I'm worried here about to take care of the community. Sometimes we need to take a hard vote on something. Sometimes it's an easy vote, depending on what it is. I take care of my ward and my constituency. If they decide at some point that I'm no longer doing what they want me to do, they can vote me out. I had a life before this, I'll have a life after this. But I don't need someone up here telling us, hey, you guys are going up for re-election, you better vote a certain way. Otherwise, I'm just going to vote down every single time we spend money, because that's what people want. They don't want us to spend any money. But we have to think about the community. What things do we need to make sure infrastructure stays strong? What things can we put off maybe? That's why I asked about the rail. Maybe we can put that off to the budget season, but some of these things that are falling apart HVAC may need to be done now, right? So that's our job. Our job is to look at this stuff holistically and globally and think, what do we need to do? And we have to balance everything. We can't just go, never spend any money or spend $1 billion every year. We have to balance what we're doing. And my question to Director Cummings is, so the ad hoc committee, in your opinion, is this something the ad hoc committee knew about or didn't know about, or was planned to or not planned to know about in the future, or should this be a surprise to anybody that sat on the ad hoc committee?
Director Cummings?
In your opinion.
Yep, thank you, Madam President. So everyone has their recollection of how conversations unfold, and sometimes I try to be painfully clear when I say certain things, and I often recognize that the way I say things may not be received the way I think it would be, and so maybe it gets missed. So I say that because I know I made it clear during the ad hoc process that we were missing the budget season, if you will, for FY25. And I thought, and I apologize if I failed and didn't do a good enough job of making it clear that that means to stay on track on a 5-year plan, we would need to use the supplemental appropriations process in the fall with excess revenue. And that's what we're doing. And that's what I thought I had suggested we would do. I think it's fair to say, though, we weren't very clear on what that number would be that we would be looking for, because we didn't know what we could accommodate, because this is a moving target. We have to look and see what revenues are coming in. We have to look to see what is left over for unexpended expenditures or appropriations, and then balance that against how much money we want to put towards the tax rate and other competing needs and liabilities and obligations. And with that being said, it was a conversation between CFO Griffin, the mayor, myself, that seemed to suggest that we could handle approximately $5 million, a little more, a little less, in that range of capital improvement spending. And then what we used as a guideline was the conversation that we had during the ad hoc process. And during the ad hoc process, it was clear, one of the sentiments is that we wanted to use cash more than to use debt service and bonding. And we understood that we had a certain target that we were trying to meet. Yet, with that being said, we also have these needs, and we have an incredible amount of investment that we're going to need to continue with. So, trying to balance all of this is an equation. We developed the current resolution, and I think it's fair to say, you could say that 90-ish% to 95% was previously discussed in some way. And as I use as an example, the Pine Hill Fire Station was discussed during the ad hoc process, but was it presented in a way where I said that we're going to take $100,000 and start design? No, but what was discussed it was identified by the fire department that it was a huge capital expenditure need that's going to need to come at some point. I heard the conversation from the ad hoc committee where they didn't just want to bond an arbitrary $20 million. This city, has professional staff like CFO Griffin and myself to help you bridge the gap. And so that's what we're doing. We saw that need, that $100,000 seemed appropriate, and it will advance this community's goals and still align with the goals that you've talked about. And so that's why this particular type of nuanced item was included in this resolution, understanding that we're trying to start the conversation more than anything else.
Follow up?
So with the ad hoc committee and the ad hoc process in place today for this year coming up, for this fiscal year coming up, would we be here this time next year doing the same exact thing with different projects?
So if I may speak to that, Madam President?
Director Cummings.
I think that is a bigger conversation that we're going to need to have. And one of the things I was going to suggest is prior to the budget season that I come and with CFO Griffin and others to talk about how we want to handle that. Because I think that is a conversation that we need to have so everyone can be aligned as to what our priorities are and how we want to handle this. As I said, it's an equation, it's a balance, and happy to do it how folks would like.
Thank you.
Next, I have Alderman Kelly.
Thank you very much. And I want to just thank all of the directors for coming out and going through these projects. Some we've heard before, some we're not always at those committees where you get into depth. So I appreciate your time coming out and explaining these to us yet again. I'm going to be supporting this in full because I think we've pointed out that it is tax neutral. We've talked about the fact that we want to pay for cash and not bond when we can. And none of these projects on this list are frivolous. They're necessary maintenance that we need to take for our city, and they have an eye to the future for generations to come. This is, $5 million in front of us that's going to be paid for in cash. But if I can tell a personal story to kind of talk through all these line items. I have an intern, she worked for me for 4 years, and I just gave her an offer letter yesterday. She's going to work for me full time. And as we were talking about, we went to Riverwalk for lunch, and as we were talking about where she wanted to live, Lowell was one of the things, and I said, have you considered Nashua? And as we drove through downtown, I got to talk to her about the mill buildings that have been replaced, the cotton mill bridge, the new Riverwalk that's going to be available for her to walk her dog, the dog park, the Center for the Arts. There's so many things that the city has to offer, and these things feel like line items on a page here, but what we're talking about is what we provide the people who live here and the people that we want to come live here. And so I will be supporting this in full, and I hope that the rest of the aldermen will join me.
Alderman Clay.
Thank you, Madam President. When I came here tonight, I had promised myself that I would listen to what my colleagues had to say, because I want to give everybody the opportunity to speak and so on. But like my colleague who just spoke, I believe that I will be supporting all of these as they stand. That does not mean that I'm not going to listen to what others have to say. I do believe in trying to keep as much an open mind as possible. I don't believe any of these items are frivolous. But I do want to speak to some of the very specific line items. Being from Ward 3, being the alderman of Ward 3, I am very protective of Greeley Park. I can't help it. I hear time and time again people refer to Greeley Park as, well, that's the north end, that's where the rich live. And I'm going to tell you right now, Greeley Park is not used by the rich. They're not used by those that abut it. If you walk through Greeley Park on a Saturday and a Sunday, and you see the people that are using the park where the grills are and so on, most of those people that are using those grills are the people that don't have backyards. They're not the people that have these very huge backyards that can afford to have their own barbecues. These are the people that can't afford to use it. So we want to say, okay, well, the Stone House, it's just a bathroom. No, it's not. Why don't they use the bathroom across the street? Well, I'm going to give you two things here. First off, the bathroom that's across the street, yep, they're down a hill, they're across a very busy street. So you're going to ask these children that are playing in the park to go across this busy street, and you're going to ask them to go there. Well, the bathroom that's there, okay, so we'll just fix the Stone House, we'll fix the roof, but we're not going to fix the bathrooms. So you're going to ask, because to fix the bathrooms means we have to make it ADA compliant. So we're going to say to these people who are disabled, okay, you can go across the street. You can go down that hill to that other bathroom. That's what we want to do. We want to say to these people that are disabled, you can go use the other bathroom. Not me. I'm not going to ask these people. We've asked them long enough. We want to fix that bathroom. We want to make it ADA compliant, because I don't want that on my back. So I want to fix the bathroom. And the funny thing is, I was talking to Director Photo not that long ago, and I had to laugh because she said to me, they actually get phone calls for people who want to rent the Stone House. They don't even know it's a bathroom. This is how beautiful strangers love the Stone House, because it's on TripAdvisor as a place to go and have your pictures taken. This is how historical and how beautiful this place is. It's not a bathroom. It's the Stone House. And we have a waiting pool that's going to cost $100,000 to fix. That is also from 1923. That's also historical. And fine, if you want to say, let the ban shell go down. A lot of nonprofits use that, and they make a lot of money there because they can they can have their shows there. And it's just not just like a simple nonprofit. It's people of different organizations, of different music, different ethnic backgrounds, and so on. I love walking through Greeley Park almost every single weekend. There's something going on there. And it brings people from all over. I mean, I'd love to get the AI placement, is that what it's called? AI Placer, to find out where all these people are coming from, because I think they're coming from all over. So, I mean, that's the Greeley Park that we have. It's not just the people from Ward 3 or from the North End that are using it. It's from all over. And as far as the rail is concerned, I can tell you, as I am driving into Boston to go to Mass General, and I'm spending 3 hours trying to drive to go into Mass General, I would love to get some of those cars off of that road from rail, whether they're going into work, or I could take rail myself to get into Mass General for my husband's appointment. I'd give anything to have that, and I'm sure I'm not alone. So this is only a feasibility study, and if we can work to try to help some of our people and so on, I would give anything for that. And again, I think that we need to look towards not just getting people out of that. And HVAC for this City Hall. If City Hall has to close, there are going to be a lot of very, very angry people. And I want to make a comment about the ad hoc committee that I was a part of too. And to defend Director Cummings here, he did mention, and I don't think it was just quite passing, but you did mention that when asked for whether or not there would be other things coming, you did say that, yes, you felt that there would be some things that we would be having to, because, as you pointed out there, we were going into we already passed the budget portion of it. And just as going forward, I think that the ad hoc committee may need to, in the future, kind of come together again, because we also said that that document was a living document that would be changing with each year with the budget and so on, because things would come up. And I believe that's why we reduced the 30,000 down to 25,000, because there would be certain things that would be going on. So as I'm talking, I am truly talking myself into supporting this document full as is, but I do want to state that I will be listening to what everybody else has to say. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you as well to city directors again for coming out. I think everyone knows my opposition to the presentation of the bill, all of them into one resolution, and having clarified what Corporation Counsel he had actually recommended that they all be broken up and brought one by one, because I believe the majority of all these should be approved. To the point, I think I made an offhanded comment about what if you tore down the Greeley House, and people took that quite literally. But again, there's constituents in the city that asked me that, and I think I should ask that, even if it's not a popular opinion. Not that I want to do it. I actually use Greeley Park frequently. I've used the grills. My kids use the wading pool, the National School of Music. Guess where my kids go? The band shell. So it's something that people should consider, that other perspectives can be brought forth, even if the person speaking it doesn't agree with it. I know that might be a hard pill to swallow for some. But quite frankly, too, the mayor gave me a call, and I have never had such a firm conversation with the mayor for him to clarify just how important the Greeley Park renovations were. He did not care that I was at Sunday church. He just wanted to make sure that the point was across, and everyone down at the senior center should rest assured that Alderman Moran supports the Greeley Park renovations. I think what I'm struggling with is, like, when we go to Greeley Park through downtown, and how I perceive where spending priorities should be, which is totally different than the mayor, who's in charge of the city, and other members of the board who help allocate the funds. Because we have to go and see homeless folks who are freezing outside of the church on Main Street. And $250,000 could help pay for a lot of funds at city welfare, as opposed to a real study that we heard from from Director Sullivan that can wait for a few months. That's where I get the caught up on. I think all these projects are amazing. We're going to be the betterment of Nashua, fix things that are falling apart, and to bring rail eventually to the city. But do we need it right now after hearing that it could wait? Or can we repurpose that $250,000 to city welfare? Or can we repurpose that money to the paraprofessionals that are being underpaid in the school district? Those are the type of things I think about when I oppose some such. Actually, Director, may I?
Yes.
Director Cummings, can this be repurposed for payroll?
Yeah, so I will defer to others if they want to answer and clarify if I get some of my comments wrong. I mean, technically, could you do that? I suppose, yes, it would trigger a new public hearing. And then I also want to be clear that we would be deviating from a stated goal or guidance I gave very early on, which is this would no longer be tax neutral. And so you would be, increasing the operational budget. I've heard some commentary where people are suggesting that, this is the general fund revenue. And to date, that's not the case. But if you were to move in that direction, then yes, you would be increasing the general fund and the operational budgets of whatever particular department you were looking to increase.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that clarification. Those that, when we talk about the rail, I support the rail. Do we need it right now? Sounds like we don't need it done this instant. It could wait to the next budget. But then we have, and I know aldermen around this horseshoe are also very concerned about the paraeducators not being funded appropriately and that they're understaffed and special needs students are going without paraprofessionals. And then we also have city welfare that I think is like at or over budget already. There's a lot of need for low-income folks, and I do support the fact that low-income people use Greeley Park. It was made clear to me that most people in my ward are the most affluent, but I still use Greeley Park as well. So there is a mixture of incomes that use that area, but I think. As a package, I probably can't support the entire package, even though I support 99.9%. But with that, I'll make a motion to remove the rail study with the hopes that it be repurposed to send to the education department to pay for paraeducators.
Point of order, can you clarify the motion?
Attorney Bolton's not here, so it's hard to. Can it be removed and then also stated to be used for paraeducation? No.
You want to answer that, Alderman Dowd?
Yes, I've had this, and obviously you're not going to take my opinion as legal, but I have had discussions with Attorney Bolton on this. Any one of these 14 items, you can remove entirely. But as part of this resolution, you can't reallocate it to something else. If we don't approve it as part of this and it goes off, you can do a separate resolution later to allocate those funds, but you can't do it as part of this resolution. These have to either be removed entirely, they can't be modified. They either go off entirely or they don't.
So hypothetically, in the long shot that it would be removed from this resolution, an alderman or the mayor could introduce a resolution at the next alderman meeting to spend the 200 plus K for paraeducators.
That's correct, and that would be actually my recommended approach if you were to decide to endeavor in that direction. I would reduce this resolution, eliminate that project, and then through a separate piece of legislation, move forward for a supplemental appropriation for whatever dollar amount you're looking for to be directed into the line item of the operating budget.
I would like to make that motion, and if I could speak to it.
Okay, so just because I have to write it down. So your motion is to remove the.
Just remove the commuter rail.
Commuter rail project feasibility study of $225,000.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And here's my pitches, if I may, Madam President.
All these hands going up. I
Yes.
still have a list of people who
You know,
haven't spoken.
I don't have to worry about reelection. Thankfully, I'm not running again. I know that commuter rail is a hot button topic for many in the city, but there's a problem to be fixed right now, and we could use that money to pay paraeducators what they're worth since the ESSER funds ran out. Obviously, that's not the motion. We're motions to remove it, but I would be more than willing to bring a resolution to the next board meeting to reallocate that money to the school department.
So the motion is to remove the $225,000 commuter rail project feasibility study. Discussion on that. Oh, boy. I'm going to start with Alderwoman Kelly and go around.
So I have a couple of logistical things. Taking money for a one-time employee is going to continue to expound the problems in the future. So if we give the school $225,000 this year, then we're going to have to fund that every single year. So it's going to continue to raise our budget. 1. 2, we can't tell the school district what to do with their money. I agree, paraprofessionals need to be paid more. I don't think that that needs to be tied in with this. For the commuter rail project, this is the least impactful way to get this done. It is tax neutral. If we tell Director Sullivan he has to put it in his budget, that could raise our budget and it could hit the taxpayers. This is the least impactful way to do the work and continue that conversation. Those are my 2 points.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, she made, Alderwoman Kelly made 2 exactly great points on that. Just because we cancel something doesn't mean, no matter what the resolution we make, doesn't mean it's going to go to the right place. They have the ability right now, superintendent's here, they have the ability to negotiate this and allocate the money to the paras that they need to. They don't need us getting involved. The Board of Education can do that. They're the ones that are not stepping up to the plate here. So I want them to fix their own problem. And I'm 100% with the paraeducators should be paid. They should be taken care of. I'm 100% for the union on that, 100%. But they have the ability to do that. They don't need us giving them a little bit of money that they're not going to get next year or the year after or the year after. They need to fix the salaries. They need to fix that now, not through this. And if you want to put it somewhere else that we can control, maybe we look at that differently, but I don't think trying to allocate it to somewhere where it's not really going to help the problem is the right approach, I guess.
Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So I'm not going to support your motion. I think, you know, as far as the school is concerned, other people have said it. You know, the schools are run by an independent Board of Education. If you want to get involved in the schools, run for the Board of Education. We can't do that. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is whether or not we're going to leave the $225,000 for the commuter rail study in this resolution. And this resolution is $5,245,000. To remove $225,000 from the commuter rail study is a token. You know, it's forgive me for being so blunt, but it sounds like you're trying to appease somebody, that you're standing up to the administration and you're not going to let them, push this down your throat. If you're talking about the $5 million, well, maybe, then I'd listen to you. But the $225,000 for the commuter rail study, I've said it before, it's peanuts. It has no effect. This whole thing has no effect on the tax rate. This is money that's in the bank. This is money that's sitting in the bank. We've already raised it. It's all of these things, as you have said, are very valuable. And so, I know that we've received some complaints from people about the taxes, the tax bills that they've got. As has been pointed out, I'm the one that's probably should be yelling the most, because evidently my taxes went up more than everybody else's. But, someone else said, you know, when we're running for reelection, people are going to ask us, what have you done to keep my taxes low? You know, to be honest with you, people don't call me and say, what have you done to keep my taxes low? You know, the previous alderman in my ward never voted for any budget. He was against spending money on anything and everything. He's no longer the alderman. I am. And people don't call me and say that. They call me and say, you know, we have a pothole. What are you going to do about fixing the street? What are you going to do about the sidewalks? You know, you've heard that here. What about our schools? You know, my kid isn't getting a proper education in the city schools. What are you going to do about that? What about police enforcement? How come there are not more police on West Hollis Street enforcing the speed laws? You know, the people that call me are asking, what is the city doing to make the city better? They don't call and say, you know, you're spending too much money. You know, they may be thinking it, but they're not calling me about that. And so, you know, as far as the rail study is concerned, you know, this is an opportunity for a small amount of money to put us in a position so that, you know, hopefully when things change, you know, we'll be in a position to take advantage of an opportunity to bring rail to Nashua. You know, and you know, I know people talk about how the governor, the previous governor, the governor-elect are not in favor of rail. You know, our governor's counselor is not in favor of rail. Well, hopefully these people will not be in office forever. And when things change, if they ever change, we're not going to be able to take advantage of it unless we have this stuff, you know, this study in place. We need this information to continue this conversation. And it's a small amount of money that is not going to contribute to the tax rate. It's money we already have. And so I would encourage you and other people to not be short-sighted about this. You know, and vote for, you know, all of these items. So, thank you.
Alderman Senate.
Heck of an act to follow. But, you know, why not? Let's rattle some cages. When my constituents call me, they call about a variety of topics. One that I've been hearing about lately is growing encampments throughout the ward and throughout the neighborhood. And, you know, we bring these to the appropriate parties, and a lot of what I hear is resources. We need resources. $225,000 it's a pretty sizable resource when we're looking at something like that, where we may need to, you know, repair people's vehicles to help get them into a safer spot, or to, you know, connect them with the resources that they need. So I do struggle when I hear that it's just peanuts, because I guess peanuts in one aspect could be a treasure trove in another. And I'm inclined to agree with my colleague at large, who I recognize this as a problem of the here and now versus a study that we are being told could wait. And yes, to push it into the fiscal 26 budget would generate a tax impact. I don't know what the net tax impact of $225,000 would be, but I'd be willing to have that conversation at budget time, because I am in favor of one day seeing rail come to the city. I certainly don't know if it would happen in my lifetime. I was 10 when I moved to the city, and we were still talking about a performing arts center, so, and I won't even get into a Broad Street Parkway. But I'd almost challenge my colleague at large. Let's have a conversation, because I don't think we'd be on the prevailing side of this, but I think between the two of us, we could think of something to do with $225,000 cash that maybe we do need today. And so I'm inclined to support this for the time being. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
I agree with the previous speaker.
but probably for a different reason. Not to say that I don't think that there are other priorities in the city. However, I look at the federal administration that's going to come in on January 20th, and it is very anti-rail. The fact of the matter is that Congress, the U.S. Senate, and the President are unlikely to support things like commuter rail over the next 4 years, and are likely to try to stop some of the funding that's been put into place in the last 4 years to expand some of those projects. So when I look at whether or not it's a good idea right now to spend this money to see if we can get commuter rail to Nashua, when I think about the fact that the federal partnership that we would need in order to make that happen isn't going to be there, and I look at the success rate of over the last 40 years since we actually had it here in the 1980s, of getting it back, it's not going to happen over the next 4 years. It's just not going to happen. And, you know, if you want it to, then I would suggest, donate to people across the country who believe in making sure that America is going to start investing in its infrastructure in a way that can get cars off the highway. But until that happens, I don't see this $225,000 as a good investment right now. And I think that there are other priorities that do need to be addressed in the city right now, so I'm going to support the motion.
Alderman Sullivan, you're all set?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Lopez.
So some of these comments were what I was going to try to bring up before. I just want to start, well, I guess I'll start by saying I appreciated the comments made by my colleague Alderman Jetty regarding if you want to get involved in the school board, run for the school board. And while it's something that most of us can't do, I think Alderman Moran just said has some free space on his schedule.
Oh, no, I'm
He already
done.
has some time.
I'm done indefinitely.
Just putting it up there. I want to clarify that I support the paraprofessionals and I would support the school board as well, because last year during the budget process, I heard a lot about how they felt like the aldermen don't support them and the aldermen cut their budget. And I think the practical reality that I've experienced is we don't see a budget request beyond, what they present to us. And often we'll sit here and say, like, are you sure you don't need more for any of these specific things? And paras have come up multiple times. And we've been told, nope, what our primary focus is most recently, the capital improvement study. So it's their board. They were elected to run the school district and supervise Superintendent Andrade. And that is their decision to make. I don't always agree with their priorities, but I can throw that from the armchair that I'm sitting in, except for when I'm on joint special school board, where I actually have to engage and interact and put my money where my mouth is. When it comes to the infrastructure, I think that's something that shouldn't be moved. We just talked about how if this money were taken out, it could be potentially used, for anti-poverty or housing stability. I agree, and I just want to say, because it was brought up as part of the motion, that paraprofessionals are a huge part of that. It was even spoken of just yesterday when we were interviewing candidates for the Board of Health, that a lot of issues that stem from affect poverty stem from their access to education, their paraprofessional supports. If people are different types of learners and they are skewed off onto a different track, then 100% we could be seeing them out on the streets of Nashua, and that's where we need our intervention systems. Tonight, we need intervention systems for anybody who's out there, because it's cold, and they're facing an immediate crisis. So I 100% support the paraprofessionals and the Board of Education. I don't want to keep on muddling their negotiations, but I think they should confidently negotiate on behalf of what's best for the students, and trust that as the Board of Aldermen, we'll support that position if it comes up. I think I am also inclined not to support the rail study moving forward, but it hurts because, as Alderman Klee mentioned, I see one of the biggest values access to the medical industry down there. And I think that's a service that our constituents need. It's not necessarily one that I hear about a lot, but I do hear a lot about how do I get from here to there? I've heard you're good with the bus. How do I get to Concord? Things like that. And I don't even think people have really thought about the possibility of being able to get to the, those healthcare systems. But I spent most of the beginning part of this year, starting with my birthday weekend, watching an 18-year-old who just learned how to drive and just became experienced, drive back and forth every single night because her boyfriend had a tumor. And that's horrific. So it's not peanuts to them if we can make this happen. It's something they're never going to vote for us for later because once those things are in place, people just sort of assume they're always there. But commuter rail is important because, every day people's lives are affected by not having access to larger support structures. I'm very conscious of that, but I also think that tonight is cold. And if we were able to take this money off of here, we're able to show that, as some of us put in our op-ed, we need to be focusing on immediate priorities, then the next step is possible. We could work with the mayor. We could try to come up with ideas for how to support programs, presuming that those department heads are supportive of it as well. But none of that conversation takes place if we just keep rubber stamping large amounts of feasibility studies.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm always encouraged by Alderman Jettie. He really holds me to account, and I appreciate it. My colleague from Wards 4 at large and Ward 7 probably nailed it better than I did when I first made the motion. Whether it's paraprofessionals, whether it's city welfare, every other project in this list has a tangible benefit that we will see very short periods of time. My children's children will probably see the rail. Tonight, there are people freezing on the streets. $225,000 is a lot of money to the point that you probably could house all those folks that are homeless in Nashua for at least 3 to 6 months with that amount of money. That is not chump change to people living in poverty and freezing on our streets who have no clue or idea of, oh my gosh, I can't wait till there's a freaking transit system that I can take into Boston to be homeless down there too. We have to take care of our community's needs now. Everything else on this project list does that. This has been the whole point about my perception of what a priority is compared to others. Alderman Lopez was much more articulate than I was, but we have other needs in the city. Who I'm trying to appease are the folks that don't come here, who could probably care less about voting for me or even voting at all, and just trying to help somebody. Where the only person that benefits from that $225,000 immediately is that consultant agency, who is probably flush with cash to begin with as it is. So that's why I'm making the motion. Whether it would go to paraprofessionals, whomever, I think it should be repurposed to something that's actually beneficial to people who are freezing and dying on our streets and overflooding our emergency rooms. But go ahead, study your rail.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Where do I begin? I'll begin with, God bless him, former Alderman Brian McCarthy and myself. Both of us had spouses that were paras. And in the past, with budgets, we had to sit on our hands because you people wouldn't allow me to vote on it because of a conflict of interest. There's been other conflicts of interest in this board, but we could discuss that. But when it comes down to the paraprofessionals, but my wife did it for 18 years. I guarantee you, she doesn't know how many kids she has potty trained. The kids are using the bathroom thanks to paraprofessionals like my wife. Such a basic need. She's worked with the children that she worked with were special needs kids. And what I found with her friends that worked in that type of business, and particularly for that group, they were loving and caring. And shamefully, we paid them like crap for years. And it wasn't us as a board. You know, maybe when negotiations come, I look to the school department. Maybe it's time for them to, you know, put their fingers on the pulse and understand that this board, through negotiations, want to see some changes for the paras. Because if we did something right now, I wonder if we really could. Because it would take like a sidebar agreement or something like that. We really can't interfere with contract negotiations. So taking monies and put it into something designated just for the paras, I don't know if we would be on, you know, strong enough legal grounds with that. So I'm not going to support that. But I commend the paras for what they have done. They worked hard with an awful lot of children. Kids that needed a little, the teacher kind of works hard with the more, I never use the term normal, typical children. But it was the paras that kind of helped out and spent the individual time. So great work by them. They should be recognized. Finally, with the commuter rail, don't show up tomorrow. If we pass this, don't show up tomorrow with your shovel and pick. That ain't gonna happen. We're not asking you tonight to build it tonight. It's just another piece of the puzzle till eventually we get the puzzle completed on whether it's going to go. Now, granted, I don't have no crystal ball. I don't know what the current president's going to do in the future. You know, I don't know if we'll get nuked or not in the future. But the thing is, right now, is part of the puzzle to work towards it. It's time to get this part done. And then every part that we have done since my involvement, and that's going on, I think, about 18 years with it, commuter rail, and working with it, we've gotten this far because of working on these small little problems and coming up with these type of solutions. And so therefore I'm going to support the commuter rail because it's got to add another piece to the puzzle, and then we could figure out from there. And then maybe when we get the finished project, maybe this board or future boards can decide what they want to do with it. But right now, it would be short-sighted on this board if we were to vote against the commuter rail, in my opinion, because it needs to go. And has it not? And I ask the question, past shortcomings, is that what really got us here to begin with? A lot of our structures, the garages, the Hunt Community Building, yeah, we saved $1. Now it doubled the cost in repairs. And it's the same with the stone house and everything else. So I'm going to support it, everything with this. It's all part. I know it's tough on the taxpayers. I want the taxpayers to know I'm a taxpayer too. I get no benefits. I don't get anything. But I see how this city can become a great city and work towards it. Because I saw in the early 80s, in the late 70s, this place was ready to die. Main Street at night, they rolled up the sidewalks. And now I think we have a vibrant city and a vibrant downtown. So it's looking at that in the future. And I think this is all part of it. So thank you, Madam President.
You bet. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, it was mentioned about the op-ed that was put out by a few of the aldermen, and they've gotten a lot of praise for it, for saving money, but when you read it, it's not really saving money. It's just taking the money and putting it somewhere else. So that's not, we're not saving money there. We're just putting it towards different uses. For me, I'm not, if this money is saved tonight, if we do not, if we pass this and rail gets taken out, I'm not looking to pass anything else. I'm looking to save that $225,000 for something else, put it in the bank. I'm not going to be supporting anything else in the future for that money. I want it to go back into the bank. And, you know, part of my reasoning is we talked about very dramatic, people are dying out on the streets. It is cold, believe me, I know, and I don't know of anybody that's dying yet. Maybe somebody has. I'm not this. I go to the longest night. I care about the people that are on the streets. I don't want anybody dying on the streets. Where's the warming station? Why wasn't that done months ago? People would not be dying on the streets if that's what's happening if the warming station was open. I look at this thing, I don't see anything from Health and Human Services asking for money on this. Nothing. So, do they need the money? You say they do, but it's not on here. So, nobody's advocating for, and I know Director Cummings has been part of the warming station discussions, so if we truly need it, and I believe we do, because I walk the streets, I go to the library, I see the unsheltered and the homeless, then where is the ask for that? So when I look at this, I'm only voting for this. I'm not voting for something that's not on here, right? So, and if we said right now, if you said, I'm going to take that $225,000, I'm going to give it to them to go fix the problem of people on the streets, warm them all right now, do you feel confident that that's going to happen tomorrow? I don't, because we don't have a warming station, or we're just getting to the warming station, right? So I don't know if that money is going to be done the right way. And I know I sound harsh here, but I want to make sure the money's being spent in the right way. And if it is being spent to save people and to help people, then sign me up. But no one's been advocating for that. Not here, not with the city, not on any legislation. Anybody can put in legislation to ask for money, and I haven't seen that. So, you know, I'm going to vote for the way it is today. And again, if I see that something on here, whether it's the rail study or something else doesn't get put through tonight, I'm going to put that money in the bank. I'm banking that money, because this is what came before. I'm not going to start trying to allocate it to other things. Let's save some money then. Either save money or pass this. That's how I look at it. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you, Madam President. So it warms my heart to hear us have a great, what I call a great liberal debate between two different sides of one political spectrum. Because to be honest with you, everything that I've heard here tonight is about how we want to make Nashua a better place. And you know, the differences really come down to how we're going to spend this money differently. So that I feel good about that. What I don't feel good about is some of the speakers tonight suggested that we put some of the money towards the tax rate, which actually is a better use, I think, than just having it sit in a bank account somewhere. Because if it's just sitting in a bank account, who is it benefiting? So I at least appreciate the speakers who came tonight at public comment and gave an alternative to do something with the money, and to say put it towards, you know, reducing the tax rate, because at least they want to spend the money that's here on something. You know, they may not have the same priority, but their idea of spending the money is to buy down the rate for everybody else who spends taxes. So whether you spend it that way or you spend it on different projects throughout the city, you know, you're spending it one way or the other. So I at least appreciate that. But my I guess rhetorical question to anybody here is, who would want to cut some of this money? We heard from some people who want to cut it and leave it in the bank. We've heard from some people who want to cut some of it and reallocate it. And that's on one project, but my rhetorical question to those who may want to cut even further into this is, would you propose to put it towards the tax rate, or would you propose to leave it in the bank? And anybody that wants to answer that, I would be more than happy to hear that answer. Because I think it's important that when you go door to door and you talk to members of the public, that you can explain to them why the city has $30 million plus sitting in a bank account when they go to the park and, you know, the playground equipment isn't great. Or they go to the library and there's a lot of homeless people in there. Or they go down the street and there's potholes. Over $30 million sitting in the bank. So I think that's an important question. And I think the harder question, sure, somebody can ask me, they can ask me, what are you going to do about my taxes? And my answer to that question has been, since 2007, I'm going to listen to what you have to say, and I am going to listen to what everybody has to say. And then I'm going to make a decision that is best for this city. And you can either vote for me or you can vote against me. I've won elections, I've lost elections to this board. But I am never afraid to come out and tell people the truth.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I am still and always will be for rail, but my colleague who just spoke made a very strong case of the current federal administration, and is starting to sway me in my opinion as to whether or not we put this off. I'm not saying that we shouldn't spend it. I'm just saying perhaps we should consider putting it off. And at that point, then it is no longer tax neutral. I don't know, I'm not going to say that we should have a definite how we're going to spend it. I don't think we should put it in the bank. While it does seem like a nice thing to do, I do think we should use it towards the tax base or towards something. I don't think we should fund the BOE. I think the Board of Education should take care of their own. I think the Board of Education, handing the Board of Education $225,000 where we have no control over would be a waste of money. It's happened too many times in the past where we have no control over, and then they don't fund it. And I'm not saying this board would do that, but I'm not willing to do that. So it's a needed, but I would never do that, and I would not support anything like that. But that's not, we're not here to discuss what to do with the money. We're just here to discuss reducing this. So we've been sitting here talking about what we're going to do with the money. So I don't want to stifle anymore. So Madam President, I'm going to ask to move the question. I'm making a motion to move the question.
Roll call.
We do have an alderman who has not had an
Okay,
opportunity
then I will pull back my motion and let that alderman speak. I apologize.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Thank you, President Wilshire, but I was going to ask that same question to move.
Okay.
I
will allow her to do so.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is to move the question, and a roll call has been requested. Will the clerk please take the roll call?
We're just doing a roll call to move the question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not debatable.
This is to move the question
Yes, it
on
is.
the amendment, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so this is just to move it, and
Yes,
then
and it's
the
a roll call.
amendment will
Okay.
follow.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Moran.
No.
Alderman Thibodeau.
No.
Alderman Govea.
No.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Senate.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
No.
Alderman Thibault?
No.
Alderman Clee is a yes. Alderman Dowd?
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire?
No.
You have 9 yeas and 6 noes.
And that motion carries. The motion before us is,
The motion is to remove commuter rail project feasibility study of $225,000.
Roll call?
yeah, now I'm going to pick back up where we were before the amendment, and that
No,
would
we
be
moved-
with Alderman Thibodeau.
We moved the question, there's no more debate.
There's no more debate.
Oh, you moved the question. I'm sorry, you're right.
Can I ask a clarifying question of the mayor?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, as you started the meeting out regarding compromise, would you be willing to reconsider putting this resolution forward with a public health component?
This is not germane to the.
No.
Sorry. Tried.
Taking the bullet train instead of the regular rail.
Should have did an inquiry.
The motion is to remove the rail study.
Roll call?
Yeah.
Roll call has been requested. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Alderman O'Brien?
No.
Alderwoman Timmons?
No.
Alderman Moran?
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau?
Yes.
Alderman Govea?
Yes.
Alderman Lopez?
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan?
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons?
Yes.
Alderman Senate?
Yes.
Alderman Jettie?
No.
Alderman Thibault?
No.
Alderman Clee is a yes. Alderman Dowd?
No.
Alderwoman Kelly?
No.
And Alderman Wilshire?
No.
You have 8 yeas and 7 noes.
And that motion carries. Okay, so we are back to the recommendation for final passage as amended.
Can we double check that count?
Wasn't that one as amended? No.
The amendment.
Okay,
That
we're
was- that
down
was
to the
8 to
first one.
7.
It was 8 to 7?
Yes.
That
8 to
it
7.
passed?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
amended.
So it was
I'm
removed.
sorry, I'm just
Okay, so
shocked.
we have the
Sorry.
original one now, yes. It is confusing, yes. Okay.
Discussion, Alderman Thibault.
Thank you, Madam President. Someone brought up in the last comments about putting anything that we take off of here back to the tax rate. I guess this question might be for Director Cummings. Now that the taxes have already come out, can we take that $225,000 and put it towards the tax rate? You're saying no, so I know that answer, but I'm asking it. So we can't put it towards the tax rate right now. And what would $225,000 do to people's taxes? How much would it come down? You have that answer? Yeah, nothing. So unless we take more of this stuff off, it's not going to make an impact.
Mayor can answer that question.
So, each percent is around 2.5 million, so we're talking about 1/10 of 1%.
So we should probably take the whole 5 million off then if we're going to save money on taxes.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Further discussion, Alderman Lopez.
So we're just talking about the original presentations, and that's what I can ask questions about, right?
Yes.
So I gotta do calculation now.
I had questions regarding the timekeeping, kind of granular, but I just wanted to know if we'd actually looked at anybody other than Kronos.
Director Mizovich?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, we've also looked at ADP because they offer similar services and they are actually more expensive.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was some kind of vetting going on there. I've worked with Kronos, so I know there's other ones. And then I had a question for Director Sullivan regarding what were the rider amenities that were mentioned in the NTS?
I have a point of order question.
Okay.
So to pass this, we need 2/3. To pass an amendment, we don't need 2/3?
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. Just want to be clear.
Director Sullivan?
Yes, Alderman Lopez, just to make sure I understand your question, you were wanting more detail on what the specific technology improvements were, is that correct?
Yes.
So
You said rider access?
Yep, so we have two efforts underway right now, one on the fixed route, the traditional bus service, and one on the demand response or the paratransit van service. Those efforts are similar in that we're rolling out two technology packages that will enhance the app usage and the real-time bus location information that passengers have. So when a bus is running late, and Alderman Lopez, I know you have some experience with this, obviously, and you know a lot of passengers that do as well.
Made it at 7:30 though.
Currently, a rider simply has to wait until the bus arrives. What we're looking to replace that with is something that actually gives a time of arrival so that someone knows whether they've missed the bus or not. That's the primary upgrade that the riders will see. But for us on the back end, it also gives us real-time bus location so that we can communicate to our dispatchers and to our drivers about how they might optimize their routes if there are delays in the routes. And so it's right now we essentially operate in the dark. We use an old-fashioned dispatch system where we're communicating via radio. This will actually provide real-time location information that allows for more dynamic dispatching and better information sharing with the rider that might be waiting for their bus or may have missed their bus a minute prior. So that's the primary upgrade that folks will see.
Okay, so I and several other riders operate in the dark as well, and we have to literally wave our phones or turn lights on, having no idea where the bus is or when it's coming. On nights like this, it's extremely cold, and I was approached by a number of people from Gatewood who pointed out that if they knew where the bus was, they could time how quickly they head down to the bus stop. So that makes it much easier to support, because I know this is something that people have been looking for a while. And I can also speak to the, every time you call and ask dispatch, hey, where's the bus? Is it on its way? There's like a pause because they have to go call the bus driver and find out what they're passing, and it's usually geographic location. So I think those are two things that would be very helpful to your average person riding the bus.
Thank you.
Those were, well, I had one other question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
The studies, the feasibility studies are kind of all over the map. Only $100,000 for an entire fire station, but the entire school district is $325,000, and then the fish ladder is $500,000. Is the fish ladder extremely complex? Are there regulatory agencies you have to do, or?
I think Director Cummings is going to comment or supplement my comments here, but the studies, we should be more precise perhaps in the language that we use when we're talking about the projects, and I'll admit I certainly take responsibility for that on my end. Alderman Lopez, the fish ladder work is actual design and engineering work. Okay. It is actual civil engineering and design engineering for upgrades to the facility. The feasibility study work for the rail study that's I know already been taken an action on, that was much broader. It included ridership data. Different outputs would come out of that. And then the Pine Hill study for the fire station is obviously different. It's more of a feasibility and space planning and site planning study to identify whether or not there might be a viable location for an alternative of the Pine Hill station. So they're really completely different studies, and that's why the dollar amounts are so different. But the reason that $500,000 is where it is because that's actual engineering design.
So can you give me an example of some civil engineering that's done with that, other than like drafting or scanning data?
Yep. One example is that our fish passage system is entirely dependent upon different levels of river flow and hydrologic patterns that happen in the river based on the seasons that we actually have fish passage. And so our current system is not compliant because of the way that it deposits fish, quite frankly, and where it's depositing fish within the river. And I'm happy to go into more detail. But basically, our engineers need to look at the different hydrologic flows across the season and determine what system is right for us to move fish between the top and the bottom of the dam. And there's actual study that's necessary to do that. It's not as simple as put the system in and hope it works.
Throw fish and see what ends up.
Correct. There's actually a science to it. And there's also a science to the fact that we're constantly modulating the flows, and the system needs to work whether we have a very dry season or a very wet season. And that requires a level of design as well. So it is shockingly complicated to be able to put the right system in place.
Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Director Cummings?
Yes, and I just want to clarify, the schools is a master facilities study, not necessarily a feasibility study, but a facility study over the whole entire system, which is hundreds of thousands of square feet.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to amend R-24-115 from the current amount down to $2,865,000. And I'm passing out a spreadsheet. You would be so kind to pass them around. I love that. Sorry, it is an eye test. Give it a second to move this around. So what I did here, and I'd like to speak very high level to the projects that I allocated here in my amendment to take it down from the original. I'm clairvoyant. I knew that they were going to take rail out of it, so that's why I
Don't
left
sit
it
here and
off
lie
the
to us.
side. But what I did here was I included, you're going to see 2.850 million here. I listened to the chief of police and I added in $15,000 for the police phone logger software because that, I saw 911 attached and I didn't want that to be left on the wayside. Bringing the total up to 2.865 million. What did I include? I included the epoxy floors for the pools. That's a time-bound project, summer opening. Hot summers, folks in the city need a pool to swim and a safe changing area. The Greeley Stonehouse, I really went back and forth on this. I put in here $650,000 towards that project and put the balance in the 26 budget. The transport system, $125,000, put it all in there. That's a grant match. There's construction costs, and you can use this in rail when it comes back to on our plate, but I've read a couple of studies that say strong public transportation in any city is a good ROI. I've heard any dollar you spend on public transport gives you back $3.37. The next two are for the fire department. I had a sidebar conversation with Chief Buxton, and he explained exactly what he said tonight, that his budget got chewed up on one project, so 100 grand is appreciated. And then I looked, he explained to me kind of the long-term plans for Pine Hill, that it really takes care of two major arteries in the city, that Amherst Street and Broad Street corridor. Once Mohawk goes through, there's going to be a lot more homes up there, and I thought that that was worthy spend. The Hunt building renovation, signature property here in Nashua, I think we need to reverse structural decay on that, so I think that's a good spend. City Hall HVAC, even though I'm sweating to death here, I asked $500,000 to be put towards the project now, get it started, get it rolling, and put the other half back in the 26 budget plan. And then the last two for the Spruce Street and the Heritage Trail East, $800,000 total. But if we spend that money, we get more money, so that's a grant match unlock, so I wanted to include that. And then again, it's not here on your copy, but I added it in, it's $15,000, bringing the total to $2,865,000. That's my motion to amend.
I have a question for you, Alderman Sullivan, about that. When you talk about the $15,000 for the police department, their ask was 45.
Correct. I took off, he presented two projects.
Okay.
One for 15,000 and one for the balance. So I
Okay.
took what to be the higher need.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. So my question, similar to rhetorically what I had asked, and I'm going to ask it through you to the maker of the motion. What would be your plan for the rest of the cash that we're not spending?
Yeah, good question, and I was actually going to raise my hand. I'd say you put it in the bank, because then it stays there, because then in future budget years, you can have it and then move it towards the tax rate. Here's what we're doing. And I know that everyone says this is tax neutral. Okay, I get that. However, what we're doing is we're raising the overall level of the budget. And then because we have a spending cap in this city, we get the number that I've seen is going to be 3.9%. So the approved budget that we had was $456 million. If we put 3.9% against that, That's a lower amount of money as opposed to these supplemental appropriations, which will bring it up to 489, and then we build 3.9% off of that. So my concern is trying to keep the overall budget spend as low as we can while still trying to satisfy some of the, I think every single project is worthy. What I'm saying here is if it's not listed, put it back in the budget in 4 months. And we'll take it up then. Pay cash for some of these, but then take the rest of it and put it back in the budget for the following year. And as far as keep it in the budget, yeah, because then that grows that fund balance, and then we can take further surpluses because we are getting more revenue than we expect. You put that in, and then we'll have even more to pay off for the tax rate next year. So that's my proposal.
Follow-up, Alderman Clemmons?
Yeah, no, thank you for the explanation. That you know, I can see how that would make sense to some folks. I am not going to support this. I appreciate the effort that was put into it. I appreciate where it's coming from, but my obligation, I feel, as an alderman, is to make sure that the things that we have already spent money on in this city, meaning our infrastructure, is taken care of. And, you know, that's what essentially all of this money does. So, you know, to me, whether you gave it back to the taxpayer in the form of paying down the tax rate next year, or you spent it on these projects, regardless of what you do in that situation, I think we can all agree that, maybe with the exception of the grants, right? Because that's money that, you know, theoretically we could just say no, and it would, you know, we don't have to do those projects. So with the exception of those, most of these things are going towards things that need to be done in order to make the city a better place, or to upgrade our infrastructure, or to maintain things that we already have. And so when I think about the option of buying down the tax rate for the next year, or spending all the money now that we have and doing it this year, it's 6 1, half dozen the other, except for the fact that the price of these projects are going to go up. So if we hold off on doing these projects, they're going to be more expensive in the future. So that means we're going to have to raise taxes even more, or we're going to have to take this surplus and use it towards these projects anyway. So my estimation of this is that we just use the money and we pass the resolution as amended, because in the end, we're going to spend the money on this regardless. We're going to have to. Or the option, of course, is to just, as some have said, and I don't think, based on this proposal that's in front of us, the amendment in front of us, I don't think that this is what we want to do based on what it says. But of course, the other option is to just let things fall down. And I don't think that's the goal here either. So from my perspective, we're saving money by doing everything now, because the costs of these projects are going to become more expensive if we hold off on them. And so what that means is that essentially the taxpayers are going to have to pay for it, whether you buy down their taxes tomorrow or next year. They're going to have to pay for it the year after.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, I'm not going to support this. I appreciate, you know, you're trying to save money in this regard, but there are some critical items that were left off of this list, and I agree with almost everything that Alderman Clemmons said. You know, on the police department, you eliminated the camera. There's a critical need for those cameras to be high higher definition than they currently are for legal reasons. And that's one thing. In the ad hoc committee, we said we were going to allocate that the school department do a study of their 20 buildings so that we can feed the ad hoc plan for the next 5, 10, 15 years, so we know what has to be done and when, and we have a third-party engineering analysis, not guesswork, to determine what is and isn't needed. So, and some of these projects you cut in half, like I see that as costing a lot more. You know, the Stone House, if you want to do that project, you should do it all in one fell swoop, including the restrooms. And I think Alderman Klee made a good argument for why you need to do the restrooms. So I just think there are too many things missing. I was ambivalent with the rail. I'm not totally upset that it didn't pass, but maybe later. I understand the rationalization of the fact that the upcoming federal administration probably isn't going to be as lucrative to rail as the one that's leaving. But on the rest of these, I think they're critically important. Now, we've done this type of analysis for the last 17 years that I've been on this board. At the end of the year, we get a list of items to cover. This year, I think it was done with a lot more thought and analysis than in previous years. So, okay, we took the rail off, that's fine. But I don't see anything else on here that I feel is prudent to take off, and I think we would be very lack in our authority in not doing these things that need to get done. I also agree that anything you take off here and want to do in the 25, 26 budget, it's going to cost a lot more. I think going forward, I think some of these smaller projects will be incorporated into the different departments, because I think we're revamping the capital improvements program, which is starting soon. So I can't support this. I appreciate where you're trying to go with it, but I think it would do a disservice to the citizens of Nashua if we don't go ahead and pass the rest of this resolution.
Mayor, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief comment. There are a couple things that are not on here that I think would be catastrophic were there a failure. First of all, the Kronos. I mean, Mr. Misevich can get into it, but if that fails and we're close on that, we can't pay people, can we? I mean, we need the system to determine how much overtime to pay and how many hours people have worked. And if that goes down, we cannot pay city employees. So, or I don't even know what we would do. That's number one. That's not on the list. Number two, City Hall HVAC. I don't know what can be done for $500,000. I'm not sure. But if that, and I'm not saying the system will definitely go down this winter, but if it does, it is a catastrophic problem. We would, what, close City Hall? This would be nothing, you know, the mask would be, the pandemic would be nothing compared to this. We closed the building. No one's here. How would we register cars? What would we do? You know, how would we register cars brings in $12 million? You know, or 17, I think. You know, it's a major amount of money, and we would inconvenience thousands of people. How could we operate? So I don't see how. You know, I don't know that we could do as much as we should with $500,000. With the Greeley House, you know, like, okay, if it falls down, so the city doesn't, I'm not saying it will, but the city doesn't grind to a halt. You know, I mean, it would be an embarrassment. It would be, I think, bigger than Stellos, but okay, we could handle it. But these other things, the City Hall heating system and Kronos, really, we cannot take the risk, in my opinion, that those things would fail.
Nick's got his hand up, I think, or not, or what? No. Have I misstated it at all?
Not at all, he was right on the money.
Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. Could I, through you, ask Director Sullivan to comment on if the hydro project design was eliminated, how much money have we spent on repairing those two dams? And if we didn't do this fish passage, would we be licensed? And if we were not licensed, how much money would we lose from the generation of power from those two dams?
Director Sullivan.
I don't have an answer to any of those questions, to be quite frank. Obviously, the lack of licensure for the facilities would likely result in an order from the federal government to shutter the facilities. They would cease operating. I can't speak to the amount of money that we've invested there, Alderman Jettie, but certainly it's in the millions of dollars over many, many years. It's over $10 million. What I really can't speak to is what the pathway would be for the regulatory agency to shut us down, but it certainly would not be a good thing if we intend to reopen them in the future. It would show that we're not responsibly managing the facilities, and I think it would be a major problem for us doing future licensing. I don't believe that the agencies are willing to give us an extension on the work, to be quite honest with you. The feds are not flexible. So if it is the favor of this group to remove this money, I don't know what step is next, to be quite honest with you. Frankly, I think I'll be walking into the mayor's office tomorrow to ask how we can get the money another way, because the work has to be done in order to keep the facilities operational. So I'm sorry to not have a more formed answer, but I wasn't necessarily prepared to answer that question this evening.
Director Cummings might have some input.
Yes, thank you. One additional element that I think is important is this, to be as conservative as possible, we're already taking a phased approach. And so, the total amount, I want to say, is something like $7-ish million for the hydro upgrades. This $500,000 is just to start the process and to get us to a point where we can bond the money. And that is all, was worked through the ad hoc process. And all we will do is then push out any of that may be done, that we may or may not be able to do. So, I just want the body to be aware of that, because that's, that's critical in this. And then relative to the HVAC, just to be clear, I do not believe we would be able to move forward with the City Hall HVAC as it's currently outlined, with the reduction of money. And so we wouldn't be able to do the project, and I just want folks to be aware of that. Thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I do appreciate the maker of the motions, creativity in bringing forth these changes, but I can't support the motion. It would be difficult for me not to hear from every single department on how these changes would affect their projects. Delaying HVAC repairs for the city. I know I just took away rail, but I'm not willing to take away heat from anyone, whether it 500,000 now and the rest later. And Kronos, same thing. I think people need to get paid. I've dealt with Kronos before. I rolled it out in a previous company. They're always doing updates and changes just to make sure that they continue to get paid for their software. But it fails. Kronos fails all the time. It's not like this is, I can, from experience, I know it will fail, especially if they're not going to update the software. And I think everyone wants to make sure city employees are paid correctly. The hydro dam, et cetera. I just, there could be a couple more things I could see going completely away with, but as the stands now where we're at, I just can't support these changes. I just think it would be too much of an impact and could really impact some critical things happening in the city. and I really think the city employees need heat. But that's just me.
Alderman Lopez.
So I want to commend the author because this is like work. It's a lot of work. It's thorough. It's seemingly innovative, but it seems like it's just another more granular version of what we are doing. We are taking a phased approach. We did the city budget. We adopted the primary expectations of revenue and projects, back last year, and then now we went, after going through the ad hoc committee and identifying what we should be paying cash out of and whatnot, we have this presentation here and we're going through that. So this just seems like another way of further dividing it. The difference being, this strikes me as what the legal department told us not to do. They said remove something entirely or leave it alone. And this changes like every single item that we put and the nature in which it's being planned for, after we had the public hearing. So that's a concern for me. I would like, as a point of order, to make sure that we put this on the, in with the minutes so that other people can see the work that was done here. And then I would point out that, as has been pointed out multiple times, there's no project on here that shouldn't be done or don't need at some point to be done. If we move this, half of the expenses here, over to the next budget, that doesn't mean all the other projects that need to be done suddenly got done. It means they're still waiting too. We just split the difference and did only half of the work, but not necessarily in the way that the city departments told us it needed to be done. We'd be giving them what we think they need instead of what they're actually saying they need. I mean, for a boiler, that might be a pretty big problem. For ordering windows and that type of thing, that's a problem. So I don't think it's a good idea to try to revise the entire approach. I do think it's a good strategy overall because it's what we're doing. And it's been brought up a couple times and I haven't really had a chance to comment on it. I would consider putting any surplus or additional monies that we trimmed off of this into or towards the tax rate at some point whenever we were able to do that, because it could make a difference for somebody on the lower end of the income spectrum if they were that close to losing their house. On the other hand, some of the funding that we cut could be used to augment some of the programs that a lot of Nashwins don't know about, that community development runs to help them winterize their house, deal with lead abatement, asbestos abatement, those different types of programs. So I am very conscious of what the taxpayer needs, and I think the conversation of if we don't spend it on this, how else would we use it? That's a conversation we can have as long as we don't automatically spend it. Or just unilaterally cut off half of the discussion about it and say, just bank it. So I think we all still have to do our job for the rest of our terms. And that's going to include figuring out what we're doing with city assets. That's going to start in this chamber, at least with the mayor presenting us what he has worked with his team. His team and our department heads whom we've worked with, presumably, for our terms, they're telling us that these are the things that they really, really need. So I don't want to ruin the fish ladder. I don't want to mess up any of the major grant projects that have been like 10 years, if not longer, in the works. And I don't want to answer to voters as to why, after all of the effort we put into, certain projects or obtaining, hydroelectric dams and all that, how we just let it slip away. So I can't support the proposed, I guess, omnibus amendment, but I appreciate the effort behind it, and I would like to make sure that it does go on the record.
Alderman Sullivan.
No, I have no comment. Thanks.
Okay. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Director Cummings. As you know, we're trying to, on Riverside Drive, to build a new training facility. And looking at the current police station with the cameras, they most certainly need to be done and to repair. But maybe this might be a question to discuss in the infrastructure committee. But it would seem that the current, if we were going to go forward with the Riverside building, that the camera system would need to be upgraded. So can it be done at one time? at least have that discussion, not looking for the answer tonight. I think it's too early for that, but maybe, like I say, in infrastructure, we could discuss something like that, you know, to see, I don't know how much we would save, is the point, you know. You get a 2-for-1 deal on cameras, I don't know, you know.
It's something we could look at. Yep.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. So a couple things. You know, people have been talking a lot about putting more money to the tax rate, so I'm going to go on record as saying I want to put more money towards the tax rate too. So when everybody gets credit for saying that, I want to get credit too. But nobody during the time of budget said, put any legislation in to say, I know the mayor said put 6 million, let's put 8 million. Nobody put any legislation through. I didn't vote on any in the budget committee. So that's the time to do it, not now. We can't put any more money towards the taxes now. We would have to wait or store it in the bank and save it to put it next year. So, but I want to put more money towards it as well. I want to support this, I really do. You know, but listening to everybody and seeing that, couple of things here, right? You know, some of these projects are split, and like people have said, sometimes you can't start projects when you don't have the full money. You need to have that money up front on some of the construction type projects. The other thing is the rest of the money that's going to be put down in 26 is now not tax neutral. So, and like Alderman Clemens said, it would also cost more money. So I have a problem kind of splitting these, and you know, the things that were talked about with Kronos and things like that, I agree with all of that. The other thing that was brought to my attention as well is I thought that we could eliminate things in this package, but if we modified anything, it would need a public hearing or we would need to do something else. Is that correct?
Yes, it will.
Okay, so that's what would happen with this stuff. If we voted on it tonight, we would have to have public hearings for this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The motion before us is for final passage of Resolution 24-115 as amended. Further discussion?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Point of order, can I just say the dollar amount for each of these items?
It's going to go down in flames.
You can read just the dollar amount.
Just the dollar amount,
We
okay,
know
thank
what's here. It's all.
Okay, good. I could just say as in the spreadsheet, okay.
Point of order.
Alderman Jettie.
We're voting on whether to amend?
Amend down
This-
to.
Sullivan amendment.
The Sullivan Amendment down to, so the motion I'm going to read is the motion by Alderman Sullivan to reduce the total to $65,000 as written in the spreadsheet, in addition with the IT phone logger of $15 million. $15,000, sorry, $15,000, yeah, $15,000, is that correct?
No,
That's for the police
The 2.865 million includes the 15,000.
I said
for
the spreadsheet included, in the spreadsheet with the addition of
Oh,
the,
Okay, all right,
because your spreadsheet didn't have that.
all right. Yes,
So-
correct,
Okay.
yes.
So I'll try to say it again. The motion is to reduce the total amount to $2,865,000 as written in the spreadsheet with the addition of the IT phone logger of $15,000. By roll call. Alderman O'Brien.
No.
Alderwoman Timmons.
No.
Alderman Moran.
No.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Yes.
Alderman Govea.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
No.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clemens.
No.
Alderman Senate.
No.
Alderman Jettie.
No.
Alderman Thibault.
No.
Alderman Cleese, no. Alderman Dowd.
No.
Alderman Kelly.
No.
Alderman Wilshire.
No.
That is 3 yeses and 12 noes.
Okay.
And that fails.
And that motion fails. So the motion before us now is for final passage of Resolution 24-115 as amended.
And that would be a total of $5,020,000.
Correct. Alderman Govea?
Thank you, Madam President. So I feel like we're going way back to the top of the 7 o'clock hour now. But when I made my original statement at the beginning, I do apologize. I was looking at the wrong sheet. And it was sheet number 5 or slide 5 on this presentation that showed the, which one was it? It was our cash payments. Yeah, this one. So it shows the 4.275. I apologize. I said 2.775. So my numbers were slightly off on there, but the testament of in the point I was trying to drive home is that we are over what the ad hoc committee kind of proposed and still are. Got a little bit better with the removal of rail. I would dive into these deeper, but I don't believe at this time there's a feeling of this board to remove anything else. The only questions I do have while looking at all of the capital matches in the grants we're looking at, what are the hard deadlines on these for them to receive funds? When's that cutoff where we're going to lose out? Does this really need to happen now, or is this stuff that could happen during the budget season and that match would still be made available?
Director Cummings?
If I may, thank you, Madam President. That is a great question, and one that I would say Engineer Hudson, Director Sullivan, myself, we are constantly looking monthly at that to understand, and we have New Hampshire DOT asking us regularly about where we're at with funding. And so we've prioritized the transportation list based off of the commentary we've gotten from New Hampshire DOT, and in terms of them needing to know that the city is still committed to the projects. And so the short list that you have before you shows you what we anticipate and expect needing funding for imminently. And we have others, to be clear, that's on the list as well. But these were the ones that rose to the top that we needed to set aside and have some sort of bona fide source of funds so we could actually enter into contractual agreements with the state of New Hampshire. And that's what the state of New Hampshire is looking for us to do.
Follow up on that?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't give hard deadlines on when the stops? It's just kind of, is it a rolling kind of?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I guess when it comes to that, I'll have to take the word that in the next 4 months, these could be lost. So that kind of runs out of options here on what I would cut, so, or that I feel the board would agree with me on cutting, so I will leave it at that.
Director Cummings?
Thank you. I think in full candor, if the board wanted to entertain the Spruce Street project, could that project be put off and not be in jeopardy in the next few months of missing an opportunity of being funded? Yes. So, I leave that for the board to decide if that's something that you wanted to do, but I will say to you that that is a project that has been prioritized by the state of New Hampshire. They are looking for funds for that project. We do need to do it, and so I just don't think it's going to be, a 4-month delay or a year delay is not going to, affect that project.
Madam President, hearing that, I will make a motion to remove that grant.
Motion before us is to remove $500,000 from the Spruce Street Connector Matching Grant Funds. Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. And, thank you, Director Cummings, for bringing that up, and thank you, Alderman Govea, for making the motion. I had my hand up before that motion came forward, but that was actually going to be my next line of questioning, was actually those two projects in proximity to one another, Spruce Street Connector and the Heritage Rail Trail East. Are those projects that are shovel-ready, or are these matching funds?
Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to define shovel-ready as being ready for construction. No, these projects are not quote-unquote, ready for construction. But what we are trying to do is they have been identified to be funded for construction by the state of New Hampshire, and we have prioritized these projects as being priority projects for us, but we still need to get through a level of design for both projects. And then particularly the Heritage Rail Trail East, We know we need additional funds than what was originally set aside. And so to even move that project forward in any type of iteration, we're going to need this and then more money as we continue to design the projects.
Follow-up?
Yes.
All right, so this 800,000 in total for these two projects. This represents design phase. And in regard to Heritage Rail Trail East, I know the last time I dug into that project with a fine-tooth comb, there was a lot of uncertainty in regard to where that crosses Spruce Street and intersects with where the Wendy's is located there. Has that challenge been overcome?
Director Cummings?
Actually, I don't know if I can answer that per se, but I think maybe, it looks like Mr. Saunders could answer that specific question. But to your point, Alderman Senate, these are the types of questions that design would help us get through. We need that money per se, whether it's this specific question or in general, to get us through a sufficient level of design so we can actually get to construction. I know particularly on that project, we have a question about the width of the trail and making sure we have the correct amount of width to be able to actually do the project.
So, if I may, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. So that project, that's, the preliminary design has been done. So, the engineer's estimate has been fine-tuned. It's getting pretty close. The next step in these LPA projects after preliminary design goes up to DOT, they approve it, then we go through a right-of-way phase. Where do we need any type of right-of-way outside of our domain? That crossing that you speak of, that I believe is Howard Street, so right behind the Wendy's, that's where we're looking for that. We will need a strip take, about a foot or so to get that width that Director Cummings is talking about. But this project is pretty close to final design and that right-of-way, and after that, we'll go for construction bids. Once we have that final number, we'll come back with another resolution, which is based on bids, and that's the final number to get this to construction, and that would be shovel-ready. Hope that answers your question.
So what I'm hearing is that Heritage Rail Trail East is significantly closer than Spruce Street Connector. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons?
Yeah, just a quick question with regards to the Spruce Street connector, because we're talking about eliminating that, correct? That's the motion on the floor? Okay, so my question is with that, so the $500,000 match, is that the total match? Or would that amount go up if the project came back, like if the design came back and it was gonna be more expensive or whatever, would that go up? Like, what is the match? Is it 20%?
20%.
So so the 500,000 represents the 20% match of what the state is gonna give us?
I would double check what I'm saying, but yes, I believe that is correct. I do not believe we have put any match aside yet for this project. So we will need to put this 20% aside.
Okay.
With that being said, and as Engineer Saunders just mentioned, when we get the final bid numbers, that's when we'll really know the quote-unquote true total project cost. And so I just say that to you, this is an estimate right now.
Can I ask a further? How much money have we spent on that so far? Do you know?
I would have to, I could probably pull it up, but I don't have it at my fingertips right now, if you give me a few minutes. Or actually, maybe Mark Saunders could answer that.
We have spent no city funds to date.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So we have not started design yet.
All set?
Yep, thank you.
Alderman Moran?
Thank you, Madam President. I will support this motion, and kudos to my colleague from Ward 1 for asking the question about if it's needed imminently or not. Because the debate of spending it, putting it somewhere else, or even putting it in the bank, you put it in the bank right now with a high yield, you make a little bit on it for the next turnaround, even if it's a couple months. I don't know what our interest rates are. But if it's not something that's immediately needed, I'm going to support not paying for it right now, and doesn't look like it's going to be an impact if it goes into could even be a year from now, potentially. So, that's all.
Alderman Lopez?
Just a question to Director Cummings. If the project isn't moving forward per se, or waiting for more design elements, and we did allocate $500,000, wouldn't it go unspent until we started moving forward with the match and the approval part?
Director Cummings?
Yes, I don't believe we have actually set any money aside at this point in time. So that's what this
After
500,000
this
will
vote,
do.
it were included in the legislation, what would actually happen with the money over the period of time between now and the budget season?
So this 500,000 would essentially be money that we would have available to us, so we actually could proceed with the project. The state would then be inclined to move forward with the monies that they have set aside. We would enter into, initial contracts and start the RFP process, or technically the RFQ process. We would select a design professional, and essentially you'd get through, some level of early design, engineer's estimate, preliminary engineering to some percentage, and that's essentially where you'd be at.
So if we approve this, then we start working on this and we reach the next level. If we don't approve it, then obviously you're going to have to wait until at least the budget season to do that. And you're indicating that probably that wouldn't cause any harm because you don't think that the state's actually going to move on this. Is that a fair summary?
The only qualification I would say is the state wouldn't be as anxious to reprogram this money yet, but what they will say is, okay, if you're not ready today or this year, we are giving you now fair warning that we will reprogram this money and it won't be available to you in the future. And that's the reason why it's on this list.
Right, and so if we don't approve this, then we could potentially lose it. But if we do approve this and the state hasn't actually done anything by the next budget season, could we just unallocate this money?
You could repurpose the money if it's not contractually obligated.
And between the time now and the possible scenario where the state doesn't move forward with it, so we reallocate it, is it going to be, the money going to be kept in a hole in the ground, or is it being kept in a bank account?
It's going to be kept in a bank account, and I just think you have the relationship dynamic reversed. The state is asking us, are we ready to move forward? And so they're holding the money aside. And we will basically be saying to them, no, we're not ready to move forward with it. And then the state will say, okay, unlike some of the other projects, like the ones that I've mentioned, that this one is not time sensitive enough. And so therefore, the state will be most likely willing to continue to hold the money aside. And so that's why, I recognize.
So we're not as likely to lose money if we don't approve this?
I'm sorry?
We're not as likely to lose money if we don't approve this tonight?
As I indicated, over the next 4 months to a year, no, I don't think so. I would be willing to take that risk, which is, I think, the ultimate point that Alderman Gouveia was getting at.
Okay.
I have Alderman Jettie and then Alderman Clemmons.
I'm all set.
You're all set. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. So I'm going to support this amendment, and the reason why I'm going to support this, and I appreciate the Alderman from Ward 1 bringing this up, is the fact that we have not spent any money on this yet. So I think it's a good debate to have in the budget process of whether or not, or it can come in a separate session sometime, to a committee and be presented, and then at that point, the Board of Aldermen can decide, is this something that we really want to do? Do we want to allocate $500,000 of matching grants to this, or do we want to do something else? And so I think that, and by doing this tonight, that's not going to hinder that discussion in the future. So therefore, I think I will support this this amendment.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I'll support this as well, if we're going to move the rest of this forward.
No guarantee of that.
So the amendment is to
remove the Spruce Street.
the Spruce Street, okay.
Connector matching grant funds.
The $500,000.
$500,000.
Okay. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries. Okay. Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, so now diving into these other two matching funds we have right now. And obviously, you deal with grants and the back end of that more than I would, obviously. But, so when they're about to pull that matching fund away, is there a period of time that you know, or is this just an email in your inbox on a Tuesday that says, all right, you've had your time, thank you. You're expired at this point?
So I'm going to answer your question two ways, if I may, Madam President.
Yes.
I think, in fairness, we know, we have some sort of indication. It's not going to just happen by surprise. I think it could happen fast. But ultimately, if the fundamental question is the Heritage Rail Trail East going to be in imminent danger, or are we potentially not going to be able to move that project forward if we were to reduce that 300,000? I'm going to say yes to that one. Like, we need to be able to move this project forward to continue to work in good faith with the New Hampshire DOT. New Hampshire DOT is working in good faith with us, and we need to move some of our transportation projects forward.
Okay, because, if I can.
Yes.
Because I think where I'm at now, taking off these two, I'm like 245,000 away from voting yes, which would be under what the ad hoc committee, or right at around where the ad hoc committee said that spending would be. So, I guess where I was leading with that question was, if we're given a period of time where we know we're running out, the clock's running out, I am almost willing to say, fine, why don't we take out this 300K now? And if we figure out the clock's running out, then we bring it back as a separate resolution, have the public hearing, and we pass it. I guess we're kind of running on speculation right now off of this one. And obviously, there's some logistical hurdles with that strategy, but the payoff would be that it could go right into the budget, and it reduces this by 300 more thousand. We're right around where the ad hoc committee said, or proposed that we be around, and I think that makes it much more palatable.
Director Cummings?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So if I hear you correctly, what I'm hearing you suggest is a reduction of the Heritage Rail Trail East project by 300,000.
I'd say either that, or we haven't really talked about it, but the NTS capital match would be another one I wouldn't mind looking at either, so.
So I'm just going to speak for Director Sullivan here and say I would be hard pressed to move that one forward for a whole litany of reasons. So if you're going to focus on any, I would suggest you focus on the Heritage Rail Trail East.
Done.
And with that being said, I think we need to have I would need to have a better understanding, if I'm understanding what you're suggesting, is then separately at some point later on over the next year, doing another supplemental appropriation for 300,000, if that's the case, to be able to move this project forward.
So what I was getting at here is removing that 300,000 from the resolution currently, and if we hear before that budget, the next FY budget is passed, that our time is running short, we revisit it at that time.
I think we're already there to answer the question.
Okay.
Like, we know
Let's
that the
start
state wants to move this project forward. We need to move this project forward. We're at a certain level of design. We're just in a holding pattern because we need to continue making sure that we have monies available to do the project.
Okay, if you think we're at that level, then I will, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. And again, I want to just say I appreciate the Alderman from Ward 1, and I've been in your position before, and I know that, you make a commitment to your voters, you make a commitment to the taxpayers, and you did that in the ad hoc committee. We all did that, right? We all do that. Sometimes you have to look at these things as a compromise. Sometimes you have to look at these things as a living document, if you will. If we're up 300,000, hopefully we'll be down 300,000 at the next time. Usually that doesn't happen, but I think the work that we've done here this evening truly is gritty. It's gritty work. We've been here since 7 o'clock. I think it's the type of work that needed to be done. I think we got a lot of compromise out of this. And so I hope that $300,000 or $250,000, if you were that close to voting yes, I'd hope you consider voting yes anyway. Because as I've said, you know, it's a hard discussion to have with a voter, but if you think you're doing the right thing, that's the better discussion to have than to say, well, I held to my principles. Because really, your principles should be getting as close to that as possible. So just some food for thought.
Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. I promise, unless something catastrophic happens, this doesn't come with a motion. But since I see that he's still here, through you to Mr. Smith, I'd just like to ask sort of a clarifying question in regard to the maintenance plan or maintenance study that is proposed here. For many, many years, I've watched the back and forth discussion in regard to deferred maintenance, and I know that there's a stack of identified issues throughout the school district that need to get done, and the money just isn't there. And so what I'm really looking to ask is that if we pass this tonight with the $325,000 for this study baked in, is this going to generate a larger list of projects that are just going to go into deferred maintenance to die? Or is this going to create a roadmap where we can strategically budget over the next 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years to address these issues? Because I hear what you're saying, especially about the schools that haven't been addressed in some time. My son's a Dr. Crisp student, so I see it firsthand. And I just don't want to throw $325,000 at a study so that we can create a list of projects that are going to die.
Sean Smith, Plant Operations Director. It's been a long time since this occurred, but I was talking to a Board of Ed member, and I was proposing we do a study because we've had a series of failures in a certain area, and he says, well, I don't want to do any more studies. It's going to raise more stuff that we have to do. That is entirely, at least in my way of thinking, that's entirely the wrong way to approach things. I mean, you need to know what's out there. You need to know what's wrong. You know when something is potentially going to die on you, instead of another Stella situation where suddenly we have to deal with it. You kind of laid two roadmaps out for me there, and you talked about the second one was strategic. That's entirely what this is. This is not a way for the school department or the city to develop a list of projects. What this is for us to assess the condition of our schools, and then to meld in our future needs for schools and develop a plan for the future. So I mean, school A, maybe decide, okay, the budget is not going to allow us to keep this many schools open. This is the school we should close. That's a hot topic politically, I know, but I didn't mention any school.
Please don't.
But it's totally strategic. I mean, that's what this whole process is for, is to identify what our needs will be in the future, and hopefully to meld in what the educational needs will be 20 years from now.
All right, great. Thank you so much, and thank you for sticking around, and everybody from the city who's here, department heads, department employees.
It's okay.
Appreciate all of you.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Alderman and Senate for bringing that up, because I'm going to make a motion. $325,000 can go a long way to the homeless situation in the city. I'm going to make a motion to remove the deferred cap maintenance study for schools, $325,000, and they can put it in their budget in a couple of months.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, we came up with doing the study as part of the ad hoc committee so that we could plan ahead. And they're not going to be able to put an additional 325 in their budget. for deferred maintenance. Their deferred maintenance is always low to begin with. We got $1 billion in infrastructure, and we get 100,000 was the original number for deferred maintenance. That's ridiculous, totally ridiculous. And this is going into the deferred maintenance account, so it can't be spent for anything but this study. And Mr. Smith already has the RFP ready to go, and this will give us a strategic plan on 20 buildings the city owns so that we can plan ahead and not end up like Manchester with $1 billion building problem. You know, let's not be penny wise and pound foolish. If we have a strategic plan, we're way ahead of other places. And this feeds right into the ad hoc committee, which I think needs to go on and plan ahead 5, 10, 15 years. And you can't do that without the data. And this is being done by an independent engineering analysis, not local people.
Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam President. Yeah, $325,000 could go a long way towards marginalized communities in our neighborhood. But I feel that was maybe put forward to make me eat my words on rail a little bit, and that's fine. But because a lot of folks have brought up a certain op-ed that my name was included on, I'm going to refer back to that and point out that my two colleagues and I who put that forward made a call to prioritize where we're spending our money. And we've been called out on that tonight, and it's absolutely correct. We didn't say, don't spend. We said prioritize where we're spending. And that's what we're doing here tonight. We're prioritizing our expenditures. $225,000 towards a rail study, to me, tonight, is not a pressing priority. $325,000 to assess the condition of our schools that many of us have students in currently, that I'm in pretty regularly and I see the state of, that is a priority. And so I am willing to prioritize that, given Mr. Smith's answer, that we are using this as the launching point for a strategic plan to make sure that these assets in our city that are a priority now, because schools are not going away. I know student enrollment is dwindling, but they're not going away. We have an obligation to the city to maintain those schools. And so, yeah, I'm willing to put this forward here, while I might not be willing to put forward other expenditures right away.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. My colleague from Ward 7 explained it very well. Also, though, of course I would want to help use this for needy people, but what are the public schools primarily dominated by? Needy children and families. School lunch. Most low-income kids get their food from a public school. The deferred maintenance will look to make sure those facilities will continue to be maintained and taking care of our children. One of my daughters goes to public school, and yes, just as the observations from my colleague from Ward 7 at Dr. Chris, the same at Bicentennial, things need to be repaired and fixed in order for the children to have a functioning learning environment, and not just the children, the teachers as well. It could have been any other thing on here, and I would have absolutely said, yes, I would love to spend it and give it to Director Bagley instead. But when it comes to the two departments that take care of the most needy folks in the entire city, maybe three, because DPW as well, but we got public health, the school department, and DPW. Those are the three departments that always get cut the most because we control them. They're on an independent board. The other boards, they make their own budgets for the most part, and we have very little say. And I do know the Board of Education is separate, but eventually we have to allocate money to them. But I'm just not willing to cut costs to repair the facilities of our public schools.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam President. When I raised my hand, I had comments about something else, but I'm going to speak to this motion. I'm the first person to say that that I think that the school board should deal with their budget themselves, and that we have to stop supplementing it, that we give them their budget. But this time, I'm actually going to defend this, even though I know that the comment that was made about the potential of school cuts could be the one that I don't want heard. But putting that aside, there are too many schools that need to be looked at, and including schools that I mentioned could be potentially cut. It needs to get looked at. All of them need to be a list of what needs to be done. And while I think Mr. Smith does a good job in maintaining our schools and so on, I think, and no reflection upon him or anybody else in the school, I don't think that we've necessarily had a really good list of what needs to be done. And I think it's schools like Mount Pleasant who really haven't had any real big work on it. It's because they know the work has to be done, but it gets put aside for another project. And I think if we had a real clear list of what needs to get done, that might not happen. And then schools that shouldn't be closed wouldn't be closed, because they wouldn't get put off, and we wouldn't be having the fights that we're having now. So I think this is important, and it's the first step to creating the future of that. So I goes against what I normally would do. I would not support this, so thank you.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam President. So, I mean, I've probably been in the public schools almost as much as anybody here, if not more. I've had 3 kids go through them. I still have 1 in the public school system. I've spent more time in Bicentennial than probably everybody in here, unless somebody taught there. And so I know that the public schools need work, but they have the biggest budget that we approve every year, and we cannot touch it at all, except to approve it or not approve it. I think there's money in there that they could use. I really do. I think they won't even pay the paras the right way. So, I mean, I would put it back on them to figure out how to do this stuff. I really think they could manage it better. And the fact that we don't get a chance to do that, and they don't have the oversight other than us stamping it every time it comes to us, is not the right thing. And that's not that I don't support public schools. I absolutely 100% do. They keep telling me enrollment's dropping, but yet their budget's going up. How is that possible that enrollment's dropping by couple of thousand, and their budget continues to rise and rise and rise, and they can't even hire teachers and paras? So that's why I put this forward. I mean, it's the $325,000. It's about $300,000 that Alderman Gouveia is looking for to complete his items that he wants to get to. I know it's not a popular opinion of this, but it is definitely 100% not an attack on Alderman Sennett because he killed rail. That's absolutely not the case. So I don't want that getting out there, because that's not it. I'm looking for stuff like everybody here is, hopefully, looking for stuff where we can try to cut. I've railed against education budgets here before. It's nothing new. I mean, me and Alderman Sullivan at one point supported at the budget time dropping I think it was a couple million that got voted down in budget. So that's a consistent, I'm consistent with that the whole way through. It's nothing new. So thank you.
Next I have Alderman Lopez.
Okay, so interestingly enough, one of the areas that we collaborate the most closely with the school board is for building schools. It's the Joint Special School Building Committee. So this would be a resource that I think the chair spoke pretty directly and bluntly about, that we have also brought up multiple times in these meetings, that understanding exactly the scope of need and the state of those is something that we want to be able to do, so that we can work with the school department and the school board on trying to make sure that we have the best facilities that we can. As was already brought up by my colleague from Ward 3, there is some disagreement over where and which buildings are most in need of repairs and what it would look like. And there is, probably direct financial impact to just saying, well, we think this one needs to go, and maybe it's in a very dense population area, that the population isn't shrinking there, so removing these buildings without actually studying what their capabilities are, what their needs are, isn't financially practical. I think we've run into some situations here recently where we didn't have a direct request for, a school facility to be improved, and then we ended up paying a lot in a bond in order to get it fixed quickly and effectively. So making short-term decisions and not attending to these long-term things costs the taxpayers. It was pointed out that school lunch is an essential part of many low-income families' children's nutrition. There's also a decent number of homeless children in the city that deserve to have school facilities that are appropriately cared for and maintained. We've had a couple of situations, that were surprising, that, an elevator that was older than we thought it was, or, something to that effect, that this would help us to best identify and target and make sure we're spending our money wisely and we're spending it effectively. Now, it was stated earlier this year, or this meeting, that there's no projects that have been brought forward. I recall Public Health actually bringing forward a low barrier shelter model with a price tag of $1.5 million in this chamber, and there was a presentation on it. I don't believe they've located a site, but I think they have mentioned it repeatedly in multiple committees, including the ones involving the warming station, including the discussions that we've had about how they're currently funding the warming station using the opioid abatement fund. So I would say there's been pretty decent advocacy here, if you're listening to it. And that's something that's probably not going to disappear until we resolve the crisis that we're facing on the public health side. It came up a couple times last night, actually. So I think definitely I wouldn't remove the school facilities budget, because I think that's an essential, not only investment in making sure that we're making sure our buildings are good, but protection against finding out that we need to spend money on things that's unanticipated. I would say that people who are authentically interested in supporting the public health efforts and emergencies that our constituents are facing should be involved in those conversations and should represent them as fairly and accurately as they can, so that we can have that support available as soon as we are ready, in terms of logistics, staffing, location, to take steps that are measurable and would have a real impact. So I do think it's important to have the conversation. I think the conversation was had earlier tonight. And with respect to my colleague sitting next to me, I'm not going to cut something just to hit a number. I'm going to be deliberate and thoughtful about it. And I'm not going to do it just to make a point.
Alderman Sullivan.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to support it. I'm going to support the amendment. I need to be consistent because it wasn't in the Sullivan amendment that I made briefly I don't know, it felt like 6 hours ago. But I think what's important, I don't want to put words in Alderman Tebow's mouth, but the way I see it is, he's not saying no, he's just saying not now. So budget season's 4 months away. I support that. I see that. I think all these projects are worthy, but I'm going to support it because I'm just saying not now. Thanks.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I'm not going to support it. We've heard from, I'm sure, I don't know if we as the Board of Aldermen have heard, but it's been in the news, and the Education Commissioner of New Hampshire has made it very clear that they are going ahead and going to cut special education funding at the state level, and that will affect our budget here for the education of our students in Nashua this coming year. So I don't think that they're going to have the money in their budget to play around and do something like this, because because once again, the state of New Hampshire is downshifting costs onto the local government, and we're going to have to fund that bill because we're not going to take away from our special needs students here in Nashua. So I'm not going to support this because I don't think that it's the right timing to do that, but I do believe that the study needs to move forward so that they have the roadmap that Mr. Smith described to us this evening. So for those reasons, I'm voting no.
Okay. Motion by Alderman Tebow is to
Please,
cut
roll call, please.
$325,000 from the maintenance study for schools. A roll call has been requested. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien?
No.
Alderwoman Timmons?
No.
Alderman Moran?
No.
Alderman Thibodeau?
Yes.
Alderman Govea?
Yes.
Alderman Lopez?
No.
Alderman Sullivan?
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons?
No.
Alderman Senate?
No.
Alderman Jettie?
No.
Alderman Thibault?
Yes.
Alderman Cleese, no. Alderman Dowd?
No.
Alderman Kelly? Alderwoman Kelly? No.
No.
And Alderman Wilshire?
No.
That is 4 yeses and 11 noes.
And that motion fails. So back to the motion of final passage of Resolution 24-115 as amended. Is there further discussion? Alderman Moran.
I just want to make one final statement, and it came from my colleague at large earlier about compromise. I came in tonight prepared not to vote for this, but after sitting here for hours, we made some changes that I find now acceptable to vote on as a whole. You know, I didn't have a dollar figure in mind. I had more projects in mind, and I think we eliminated 2 projects that weren't immediately needed, and then we could, I intend to pursue that extra $725,000 to other projects, whether that gets approved or not, whatever. But I believe it is, just like my colleague at large has said, compromise, working together. I think there's a good overall package now for the city, and thank you so much for the directors and the superintendent for sitting here and listening to us all night.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. I mean, just looking at your faces, I know you're all ready to go home and sleep, as are we. This is 2 nights in a row for us, at 11 o'clock.
Roll call, right?
Roll call, yes. Okay. Alderman Clee.
I just wanted to say that the new number is $4,520,000. So,
Roll call has been requested. Would the clerk please call the roll?
sure. Alderman O'Brien?
Could you read the amendment?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. The motion is for passage of R 24-115 as amended for a total amount of $4,520,000.
Yes.
Alderwoman Timmons?
Yes.
Alderman Moran?
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau?
No.
Alderman Govea?
Yes.
Alderman Lopez?
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan?
No.
Alderman Clemmons?
Yes.
Alderman Senate?
Yes.
Alderman Jettie?
Yes.
Alderman Thibault?
Yes.
Alderman Clee is a yes. Alderman Dowd?
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire?
Yes.
You have 13 yeses and 2 noes.
That motion carries, and Resolution 24-115 will be sent to the full board.
It's adopted.
Oh, no, it stops tonight.
Yes,
I was
this-
thinking we were at budget.
No.
That motion carries.
Start over again.
Resolution 24-115 is declared duly adopted.
6 motions. To get it passed.
Okay.
Nobody will be in city office.
Alderman O'Brien?
Committees?
No?
Nope.
Adjournment.
I would like to make a motion that the January 7th special Board of Aldermen meeting so be adjourned.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at
10:55.
10:55 PM. Thank you, everyone.